dear ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eliana, the founder of CircularTech, and I'm very cheerful to see you all here at the CircularTech Forum, Battery Pass Edition. And before we start, maybe I will tell you a short story about me. So, when I was a small child, I had a big hobby to watch different documentary movies and read different books about the animals and flora and fauna and everything what was about nature. And surprisingly, one of the books what I had in my hands was a Bible. This Bible for children with colorful pictures about the nature and about the planet. And after I read it, I had a feeling that I'm so much thankful for that planet, for that everything what we have around us, and also I had a desire to protect that planet in that sense that to keep this planet in that virgin condition as we can. And I started to develop some plans, and I even wrote some ideas in my diary. And that idea was to create a sphere that will cover the surface of the planet, and it will have two functions. One function will be the filtrating function, so to clean and purify the oxygen from all this damaging and dangerous emissions. And the other function will be detecting the dangerous zones on the surface of the planet, and to send this information fast to us, to humans, to enable fast actions to act against the danger, like fires and deforestation and so on. But some years passed, and I'm simply happy to stay here and to find myself in the center of the topic, digitalization and circular economy, because I strongly believe that digitalization is actually that tool and that gate that can enable us to protect our planet, to find a way how can we grow as humanity, but grow sustainable way, And actually that's why CircularTech is existing, because CircularTech is all about the circular economy and digitalization. All the processes that we will have in the future are connected with digital identity. You need to know what do you have in hand. When you have an I team, the transparency is very important to bring the order in all the processes. And CircularTech is acting as a global gateway to connect the global digital product passport and different digital solutions that are driving circular economy together. And we're doing this in both ways. One way we do it in person, like in the formats and forums like that, and the other way it's in the form of the platforms. Our CircularTech platform combines and organizes the work of collaboration between the digital product passport ecosystem. And here we are also very gladly to have some conversations about possible collaboration with some EU projects. That's why I'm happy that we have such a big amount of people today here. And before we start, Torsten, I think we can also check the other slide. I trust that some of you already saw this picture, from the Solvay conference. It's the 5th Solvay conference where great minds of the physics and the chemistry came together. The minds like Albert Einstein, Marie Curie, and Heisenberg, and Niels Bohr. And the idea was to find the answers on the questions, unsolved questions about the physics, about the chemistry, and actually through the possibility of exchange through the different research lines and all these minds that came together, they contributed that way that they found a nice conclusion to the quantum theory. And I see here the synergy with the CircularTech Forum and with the CircularTech concept, because it's all about the right place, the right people, in the right time. And CircularTech is specializing on that. We manage this digital passport community, digitalization community that foster the implementation of digital product passports in the circular economy in specialized clusters. So it's a cluster of the industry, cluster of the startups, cluster of the sustainability ecosystem and tech ecosystems to find the bridge through this and find the way how to connect these gaps, So I hope you understand my idea and what I mean, and I think we can start our forum. But before we will really start the program, I will give you some information about that. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors and our supporting partners who made it possible to organize this all. So we're very much appreciating companies that staying in the forefront of the topic digitalization and circular economy, like companies like a GS1, Cofinity, Siemens, projects like a Muddy Trace, Sirpas2, and many others. You see their logos here, the Ministry of the Economic Affairs and Climate Change of the North Rhine-Westphalia. Thank you very much. So we prepared for you a very interesting program. We will have two keynotes. One of the keynote is opening from the regulating DPPs and the views from the regulating chair from Ilias Iakovidis. Then we have a panel number 1, the insider perspectives and the progresses made in the battery passport. Then we have a panel number 2, where we will explore some intersectoral digital passports. And then we have a networking pause. You have around 30 minutes to have a network, to talk with each other. Then we have a presentation, from Cornelia from European Circular Economy Fund, who will tell us about how actually digital product passports are staying in the frontier of sustainable investment. And then we have a panel number 3, I think the most interesting, the technical panel, that will open us some insights about digital product passport standardization and implementation topics. And then we have a networking dinner with some nice music. And so that you know, we have some time for you that we planned in our program that you will be able to ask questions to the panelists, to the speakers. That's why I prepare these questions, and just rise up your hand and someone from our team will come to you with a microphone. So I think we are already ready and have connection with Brussels because Ilias joining us remote. So I think you already also know Ilias. Ilias is the advisor of on the digital aspects of the green transition in the European Commission and DigiConnect. He is very deeply involved in advancing the digital enablement transition to circular economy, especially in the projects like Digital Product Passport. Dear Ilias, so this is the right person with whom to talk about topic Digital Passport. Do you hear us, Ilias?
Yes, I can hear you.
So greetings from Cologne to you.
Say it again.
Greetings from Cologne.
Yes, greetings and nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you that you found the time for us. And the stage is yours. We have a very nice setup of the people and we're very much excited about your keynote.
Good. Are you going to share or should I share?
Feel free to share.
Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Very good. So do we go?
Yes, let's start.
First message. Circular economy is more important than you think. A lot of people talk about climate change. A lot of people talk about pollution. A lot of people talk about biodiversity loss. The driver of those triple crises, what really is why we have climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss is the circularize our economy. So non-circularity of our economy is the driver of the climate change much more than what we normally hear, how much oil we're going to burn and how much gas or hydrogen or electric cars we're going to put in our cars, which dominates the discussion. The real culprit is the way we run our economy in a non-circular way. That's the first message. There are a lot of statistics, but the people do not make that connection. So I just want to make it sure that for most of you in the room, I'm sure this is a no-brainer, but maybe some others that have not seen it presented in this way. The circular economy. So if we assume that circular economy is really important, it's the driver, it's actually the reason why we have these 3 problems, which are equally important. We talk about climate change, but pollution is actually the one that kills us even more than climate change at the moment. The way we actually think about it is the many R's. So another message is many think that recycling is equal to circular economy. Recycling is already a bad thing. Circular economy is about everything possible before we reach to recycling, which is the necessary thing that, okay, we have to do it, but it's not about recycling. It's about everything before if possible. And that is the misunderstanding of the general public. Oh, I recycle, so I'm green. It is about doing things before we reach recycling. Another message. For that to happen, information exchange is a key. I mean, it's the only way to go. That's where IT comes in the picture. Before we could do without IT, and things were just fine. Now, circular economy is not new thing invented by humans. It's the oldest state of play of our planet. Our planet, since its birth, works in a circular fashion. That's how nature works. This is the principle of nature. We just diverted from it and we're trying to learn from it. Why recycling is not the key? Because we can do so many things. Just think about how we dispose of devices and how we recycle things that are perfectly well functioning. And that you have some statistics here. So there is low-hanging fruits that we can do in some markets more than others. So batteries, textiles will be discussed in details. Maybe tires is also mature, or maybe some others. And we will try to pick on those because other markets are not as mature than others. So not all markets are ready for this. One thing I want to bring that you have maybe not discussed enough, but I know the textile industry knows very well what I'm talking about. Consumers at the moment want to be green, but are not doing it. So when you ask somebody in the beginning of a shopping mall and shopping trip and say, what matters to you? Price, quality, green? They say, yes, all three are perfectly top priority for me. They will divert 10% to 15% between price and quality, but they can divert 70% from green. So they do not act. So the gap between intention and action is big on green. So there is still a lot of way to go to actually give them some kind of a responsibility to have on their intention of green. Now, circular economy is in the Commission discussed for at least 15 years. It's like 15 years that the discussion happens, but it's taking momentum, and only it's really 5 years that the second Circular Economy Action Plan kicked in, that we are more serious about it. And the ESPR that we're discussing were the DPP, so Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, is only one of many legislations helping the circular economy transition. So I want to give you kind of a zoom in. So circular economy has an action plan, and there are many, many actions, 100 actions. Some of them deal with the sustainable product policy. And the champion of that is the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, the so-called ESPR. So that regulation introduced the digital product passport. Now, there is a long story. I don't want to go into it, how it all happened, but it was basically us in DigiConnect boycotting the central approach to battery regulation, which preceded the Eco-Design, the ESPR. So batteries came in 2020, and they wanted to do centralized database, so DPP to be centralized. We have boycotted it, some aspects of it, let's say internal discussions. And that's how the decentralized idea was born, and that's how DPP was born. And then us, together with Envy, William, and Grow, Michele, for those that know the DPP Musketeers, we started developing the concept of DPP for all the products. So it's already 4.5 years, 4 years that we're developing the idea that slowly led to things like the DPP that you see in the regulation and the CirPass project and all the ideas that are circulating, and maybe Caroline will be telling you more later on. But just recall, ESPR is not the only regulation relevant for circular economy, okay? But it is the one that introduces officially the DPP. Now, how that ESPR works, it's for those that are not aware, sorry for repeating ourselves, for those that have heard this before, it's a continuation of the Eco-Design, which is there for many years already. So the Eco-Design that focused on energy is now expanded to focus also on material efficiency, not only energy efficiency. So Eco-Design has enlarged and has brought a new way of functioning in a way that ESPR is the framework regulation. as before, eco-design will take one product category at a time. We'll introduce what eco-design means, not only for energy, but also for material. And those information requirements will be then captured by digital product passport and shared between B2B, B2A, B2C. Now, you can see, again, I will not go through all the details, but the slides are self-explanatory. That the first thing that there is on the first, see the first on the bottom, first left, is the working plan. The working plan is like which product categories we go into, how we're gonna start all this. And there we work with JRC to kind of give us like what are the top priority products that are not energy related, where eco-design was traditionally in, and there is still the apparel for those that know what that means. How are we gonna go about this? So this is coming up. There are many links that will show you where are we in the progress on the working plan and which product categories we're going into. And as you know, batteries, it's already there. Textile will be for sure one of the first ones. So, but you can see some other examples. Now, the logic of ESPR is eco-design requirements for product category, performance requirements that will be the proxies of the information requirement. So information requirement will capture those performance, and DPP is the mechanism to handle it. So DPP has, by regulation, very specific role. But that specific role has been seen by all the services in the Commission, but more importantly, by all you stakeholders, as a great opportunity to do many more things than just capturing the performance of a material or product. And that's why, beyond the categories that the eco-design will handle, which is, those that you saw the list, many other separate product regulation are saying, I want to use DPP. And it's toys, detergents, batteries, of course, because they were there already. And from the beginning, they planned that they will use DPP, construction, vehicles, and others. So many other separate categories that were not on the radar of eco-design, ESPR, are now saying, I want to use it. My personal wish is that we actually make DPP available for those that don't want to wait for ESPR to tell you exactly what are the EU requirements for that product category and start kind of jump the gun. Now, it's a difficult thing to say, and don't repeat me, because normally you should wait until we take your product category and tell you what DPP has to have officially. But I see, and from the beginning, I saw that this is a B2B opportunity, and I'll come back to you in a few more slides, how it actually makes sense for business. So why DPP is a tool to enable transition to circular economy, circular business model. Now, when it comes, and we have those, many of you must have seen these slides because this is a slide I produced already 3 years ago. So this will repeat over and over. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody if it goes well, but there's also a lot of scare, like paperwork and how and who and security and garbage in, garbage out, who certifies the information. So there's a lot of challenges, and we are aware of that. So it's not so rosy as we're going to say, but my primary concern from the beginning was to enable B2B, and two, to enable DPP as a service, to make a vibrant market of IT companies that can provide DPP to all the SMEs and all the big companies that do not want to bother with all this IT nightmare that DPP may introduce, okay? So very quickly, all this is written just to put it kind of in a hierarchical grouping. DPP can help you to actually streamline the information for the conformance to some kind of a, let's say, managing the data and administrative data that you need for compliance. It can help you automatic reporting. It can help your information and communication that is now happening by emails and PDF signed online communication with across the supply chain. It can help, most importantly, and that's the ultimate goal of DPP, to transit the company's business model to more sustainable business model. So from selling materials and making money by selling quantities of things to go into a little bit more of a product as a service, for example, in those categories that it makes sense. But there are many other circular business models to bring in more renewables, to bring in more reparability and kind of a life view. But in order to have situational awareness, in order for you as a company to have a situational awareness, what is happening with my product since I am now moving from extended producer responsibility to extended producer ownership, if I want to go into this extended ownership as a company and I want to make money from the same product many times, I need to know what is happening. And that I need to know what is happening, how you're going to do it. So DPP is the vehicle for you to record the episodes, where it is, in what state it is, to do predictive maintenance, to make sure that you can actually resell it or reuse it, or when it needs to be refurbished. So where is the material, how much material is circulating in those products? All this situational awareness is what DPP can really help with. But only if industry trusts this and the whole supply and the value chain brings in value and quality information. And that will take years. Looking at the automotive database, it took them 5 years until they have quality data that they can trust. We may not have so much time with DPP, but I hope that you understand that there will be a transition period. It will take time for people to trust and to understand how to put info in and how to trust the system that from the identifier to the access rights will be managed properly. Okay. So there's more business opportunities, but if you because sustainable business model is the only way out. So it's inevitable. Now the question is how far and how fast you can do there. How fast can you get? And DPP is the way to get there faster, to have better market presence or some kind of a benefits of getting to sustainable model faster. It's why I'm saying it's inevitable, because the way we run our economy, there'll be not enough materials to sell. The usual quantity-driven business models have a limit from many points of view, from materials point of view, all the way to pollution point of view and the energy and the labor capital point of view. So it is the only way out. Now, people say, well, that's too far, maybe 30 years from now, but maybe it's right. But the question is, who can get there faster? I think that the consumers are also watching and are ready to pick it up. But that is another story that I want to tell you. At the moment, the circular business models are not yet economically profitable for maybe companies. It's not yet mainstream, but also the consumer organizations are saying that this kind of a leasing model still does not make economic sense to me. If I lease, for example, something for 2 months, it's the same price as buying it. So why would I do that? So we have to go into many iterations to make sure that sustainable business model, like product as a service, are cheaper than alternatives. We are not yet there. So while we are now struggling to make DPP a reality, there'll be as much work afterwards, which is much bigger scope work, including VAT for sustainable products, including pricing of the material, including externalities to be also priced. There is so much more work from running DPP to make a sustainable model cheaper than what we do than alternative non-sustainable models. Okay. So we are so far yet from reality. So there are still several steps that we need to take into account and plan for. Now, again, this slide has been there forever. So those that haven't seen it, digital product passport was originally proposed by all the other DGs as a centralized EC, European Commission driven database. We in DG Connect said this cannot be for many reasons. It's not manageable from IT point of view. The number of queries such database would get once you have, several product categories on it will be unmanageable. More importantly, the liability, if it's a B2B database that is used for B2B, for value chains, if we are down as a commission, who would pay the damages that we are incurring? So that was very quickly then dismissed as an option for commission. And then we created this decentralized support this decentralized architecture. The DPP itself, we distinguish between the DPP system, so the IT system that will handle the DPP data, and the DPP data per product category. So I'm sure 90% of you have seen it and already have embedded it. But for those that see this for the first time, just to separate two things, we're talking about the DPP system that will run and understand the identification system, the security, the access right management system, the storage, the aspects of, if you're familiar with medical records, so it's the electronic health record system, from the DPP, which is the medical record of a specific patient, okay? So that will be done by delegated acts. So for every specific product category, we will have a consultation, we will have expert groups, we will have member states to design what do we capture about textiles. On batteries, it's already decided. On textiles and detergent and steel, we will have to have a discussion what will be in DPP as a mandatory data. And the second discussion that we have internally is how much of a voluntary data we allow and how it's going to mix, how it's going to be separate from the mandatory data. Because many voluntary data the value chain will want to capture beyond circularity, kind of a bottom line as a limited set of data. There'll be many other things you can capture using DPP system. We need to allow that because B2B can be much more efficient, even for administrative reasons, if there is voluntary data around it. Now, how are we going to separate and how are we going to make sure that we don't confuse the consumers is ongoing discussion. But I hope that voluntary data will be allowed and will be kind of enabling B2B to happen. Next is the design. So decentralized, I've talked about it. There will be, a priori, it will be closed except things that are for public. So there'll be public aspects, there'll be private aspects. And that's where the trust will come into, because you only put sensitive data if you trust that it's only intended for those that can see it and not others. Again, this is something you can actually read yourself, and it's self-explanatory slide. Now, there is also the registry. So the reason behind that, and this is ongoing, so I'm not going to deep dive into how the registry looks like, but just to tell you where it came from. When we discussed with member states in the council this ESPR regulation, they said, we want a centralized database. So I brought those two arguments. Impossible in terms of 10,000 queries per second you cannot handle, and impossible with liability. They said, okay, we understand. But I still want for my market authority guys to have a central database experience. For them, they are lost with the centralized approach. Just if a market authority, my guy in the market compliance or market authority surveillance, give him an experience where he with his laptop or his PC will go and he feels like he's in a centralized environment. So we came up with this portal. We are now working on it. From technical point of view, it has a lot of challenges, especially how much of a centralization will happen with the indexing and how we're going to register all the queries and what will be in this telephone week we're talking about. So this is still unsolved problem yet. So there are some proposals that we have from studies, but we will have to see actually what makes sense. We are not yet there. Now, for companies, that has been, it's written in the legalistic text. So if I had to summarize, I would say every company has to create the DPP. Many companies it's completely Chinese to them what it means. So they will actually have to go to a DPP service provider for a simple reason that we also require backup of the data. So even if they want to do it themselves, they will still need somebody to back it up. If they go bankrupt, if something happens to their system, we want another company or another provider to have the backup data. So DPP service providers will be needed, whatever happens. The completeness, the authentication, the quality, that will take time. It's kind of the legal entity placing the product on the market. That is their biggest responsibility. So they are more equal in the value chain than others because they are responsible for DPP. And we hope that there is a cascade event that they will push the supply chain to get there. For big companies, they're already doing it. For small, it's going to be a challenge. And we understand that, and we will try to help as much as we can to streamline, to help, to kind of push and collaborate in international setting with other countries, because there are countries that will kick and say, don't put further requirements on my SMEs in, let's say, Vietnam, because they are already drowned by filling in ESG reports for big firms or for big chains or for other countries. So there is a fatigue with respect to burden that we need to help, that we come in actually to simplify instead of add another burden on the SMEs of third countries. This is the timeline that, again, you will have with you. What is important is to see that soon we will have the working plan. So we'll actually know which product categories will be on the map coming up. Now, given the resources I see, we started with 3 people, as I said. We are now more like 15, okay? But still, how many product categories can we take a year? I'm not sure, but it cannot be more than 3. So it's very slow. Plus all the other product categories that are different teams around the Commission that will adopt DPP. That's why it's important that the market notices, doesn't wait, and the principles and some of the standards that we develop for DPP system can start being used also for product categories that we will not have time to look at in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not sure if this is politically correct what I say, but okay, this is my view. This is the plan for working plan, March 25, and also for DPP as a DPP as a service provider. We actually will try to create who can become to certify these guys. So it cannot be just anybody. And we hope that this is a vibrant market of many companies, not one company dominating, providing DPP as a service, because it's actually forbidden in the law of the SPR regulation that the data by DPP as a service provider is used for anything else than supporting the company they doing it for. So they cannot use that data for other reasons, okay? But still, we don't want that, that there is a quasi-monopoly of this, that this is a vibrant market that of maybe even SMEs supporting a very specific product category that they are very familiar and they work with and they trust, and they are being trusted. So we know that batteries are first, so we have to be there 1 year before. So we know we're working on the DPP system is ready 1 year before the batteries kind of start doing it in real life. Now on the working plan for textiles and others, ideally we would like to be there by end of 25. It may be later. We'll see how it goes. So these are the kind of deadlines where we're going. This is again readable. You can read it, so there's nothing for me to add than just to repeat what's on the slide. I want to say one more thing, and that is, how do I attract green, climate, sustainable, whatever you call it? How do I attract sustainable finance to support me in this transition that DPP is supposed to help? So I'm trying. I will come back. Yeah, sorry, one more thing. Maybe I didn't say, but the DPP itself is a collaborative work, not only of 3, but now more like 6 DGs. Okay, and we are all working and trying to see how to work so it brings in value for each of the DGs mandate. But basically, this is a collaborative work where DG Grow has a new team, and they have grown the team. So it's like 4 or 5 people now. It's not only 1 that are working with us, and the other 4 DGs, 5 DGs on this. So this is very important for you to notice. This is actually a collaborative work. So whatever I speak now, I speak on the behalf of all my 15 colleagues, at least 15. And when you want to approach us as a commission, you should try to send it to us and understand that we will share it and discuss it with everybody. So it's not like question to connect or question to grow and question to envy. So keep it in mind. This is discussed. Everything will be discussed among us. So we share everything that we get as invitation, as position paper, as problem paper, whatever. we have, and so this is something that DigiConnect funded. Now, the second part of CIRPAS 1, I guess who doesn't know can go actually to the website to see, was more of a content and landscaping of what is happening. CIRPAS 2 is about a real life experience that can feed as quickly as possible to the legislative work. And Caroline, I'm sure Caroline is actually on the program, I think, so she will talk to you more about this. So last thing I want to talk about, how do you attract sustainable finance? Because you should, if you are in the progress, making a DPP or making new transition to circular business model, how do I attract climate finance? How am I noticed by the investors, by public or private investors? So there is something called taxonomy. For those that don't know what it means, it's actually us telling under which condition a activity can be called sustainable. And there are 6 categories that taxonomy is concerned with, and there is one called transition to circular economy. In that transition to circular economy, there are activities like the ones that you read on the slide now that are eligible as activities to receive support from green, sustainable, climate, whatever you call it, finance. And that finance is something that has better conditions. There's a lot of money now given by Commission to member states to support such activities. And many private investors now prefer to say that I will put most of my money to sustainable activities. So the big banks, like I talked to World Bank, EIB, EBRD, they are all committing that 40 to 50% of all my financing will go to sustainable activities. And they have their eligibility checkers. If they are in EU, they have to follow taxonomy. But if you are outside of EU, they still have developed like what is sustainable? What kind of activity is sustainable? Well, the digitalization of my company to enable DPP, actually we want to make it sure that this digitalization is sustainable activity that gets supported by green financing. Ilias, so that's what I wanted to end with, and I'm ready for questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your insights. It was very interesting, but unfortunately we need to manage the time. Yes, so let's open it up to the audience, to the guests. Do we have any questions to Ilias? Maybe during your thinking, I have one question from me, Ilias. I saw that on a slide number 10, you say that it's a lot of new regulations that rely on a digital product passport and on the components of digital passport, like, for example, detergents regulation, construction regulations, toys. How to ensure that we align with all those regulations, the way that it will be not costly for the producers to... that it will be not additional cost for producers, and that it will stay consistent with the different IT systems, so that we don't need to rebuild the IT stuff every time again new.
Right. The bigger that list is, the better, because they will all adopt the same way. So there is something, the ESRS. So there is already a law how you have to report the sustainability. Mm-hmm. We will need to adapt that the DPP and ESRS are the same. And as many product categories use DPP, so much better, because all those markets will have the same way how to translate DPP to ESRS, to their own reporting for compliance. Mm-hmm. Now, what is that compliance for that product? That's different for each product. But the method of collecting the data, using the data, and filling in those reports, more product categories are on this list, more product categories use DPP. Mm-hmm. We don't want, because there are some others that are saying, no, I don't want to use DPP, I will do my own labeling, and you have to do it for me that way. Mm. And you have to create kind of a DPP system for this product category in this way rather than that way. So we want to avoid this fragmentation. We want to put as many product categories on a DPP system so that the data there can be translated in a semi-automatic way to the reporting that you need to do.
Mm-hmm. And is it already some work in the direction? So you already started?
Work is done, yeah. So all these regulations, all the colleagues from these regulations are looking at us when we come up with DPP system to use that. Mm-hmm. So it's actually having that list is good. It's not fragmentation. This is where we try to be common. All those that are not on the list, we still need to convince that DPP is something good, useful for them as well.
Do we have a questions? We have a question. Yeah, Thomas.
Thanks a lot, Ilias. I'm Thomas Knote, chair of JTC 24. And of course, I have a big question next to the congratulation of your presentation, especially the first ones. My question is, what is the strategy of the European Commission to make the DPP and DPP system globally acceptable? Because you know we are so dependent on global supply chains, and it's very important to have this aligned with the global activities.
Thomas, so first of all, I wish you all the best, and I really appreciate your effort making the JTC 24 work to be successful. So I know this is not easy. I know that my colleagues are in touch with you on a regular basis, but we appreciate the effort and we hope that you will manage all the way to the end. Now, on the international, it's kind of, I would say, three-pronged. First, I and my colleagues are trying to bring it on the highest level to international dialogue. So US is interested. I'm introducing to Japan, to India, to whatever we do as a dialogue with countries, our international cooperation team. I'm raising DPP to them to make sure that we start the dialogues for them to feel like they are involved, because the human issue is, if I was not involved from the beginning, I don't want to use it. So we need to ensure that this is a, as broadly discussed issue as possible. On the other hand, we have colleagues that say, don't bring all this complexity because we don't even know what we do ourselves. If we start putting in US requirements, that will kill us. So we have to see how diplomatically we can start these discussions through UN fora or whatever other the bilateral dialogues to get there. The second approach is that through the standardization bodies. So US and CENELEC, you have your counterparts in ITU and ISO and JC, whatever. You actually, and we're trying to help that, you already start working with those international bodies. And the third element is the stakeholders and the companies that are international companies. So when we talk to companies that are operating in Europe, they don't operate only in Europe. So it's in their benefit that if they're going to do this for European market, why would they do something different from Asian, African, or Latin American markets? So all three have to put their force behind. Yeah? So all these approaches have to kind of collaborate and try to do it. Because as you said, if we just do it in Europe, that will not work enough.
Yeah, that's true. So,
but everybody has to give a hand on this one.
We have time for one question more.
Hi, Elias. This is Susanne speaking. Good to see you. I have a question about what are we doing about the supply chain that has to provide all the data for the digital product passport? How do we make sure that we don't have too much different solutions in the supply chain where different actors in the supply chain exchange the data that in the end goes into the digital product passport? How can we help the supply chains provide data? What activities is the European Commission planning?
This is the hardest question. I was hoping nobody asked this. But you are too experienced with this. This is, for me, the hardest problem. How do we, because we have no leverage on third countries. We have no leverage even on the third country companies and so on. So how are we going to ensure that people bother, and not only they bother, they actually put quality and trusted info in? So we need to create incentives. We need to create simplifications. So it's kind of a multiple front. There's no killer app or single way of doing things. I hope that the big companies, so if we start with the multinationals, I have already people on the ground throughout the value chain. So the big companies have their own people there checking the quality of the product, the material production, the spare parts and all that. So that I see as an easy way for them to bring in that extra knowledge and local support and training on trying to figure out what kind of data has to be captured there, and then can be trusted by the manufacturer, whatever that manufacturer is. So that is easy. But what happens in product categories like textiles? So Andreas Schneider, hopefully, maybe I just put it on him. How do we actually ensure that this scattered world of thousands of SMEs will be helped and will be motivated to do that? Maybe I think there are batteries coming up and textiles discussions coming up. It would have to be a little bit differentiated per product category. What is the particularity of the product and how you motivate this? I still don't know what are the universal motivation parts other than access to market. So if you do that, you will be my preferred supply chain, supply actor. If you don't do that, I will try to look for somebody who can do it because it's my obligation in Europe to fill it in. It sounds simple, but I don't know if that's enough. That as universal motivation, but much more will be needed. And I think there are people in the room that will be speaking next that can give you much better and more detailed and concrete actions how to do it per product category.
Thank you, Ilias. Thank you very much for your insights, and dear guests, thank you for your questions, Thomas, Susanne. But let's move forward and say goodbye to Ilias.
Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for your time. So let's move forward, and I am keeping the moment. I will pass my microphone to Susanne, the expert in a digital product passport and the pioneer in that topic, who is actually also the founder of the For the Record company and supporter of CircularTech. She will moderate the panel number 1.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, my panelists, and again, thank you for coming, audience. This really feels like a class reunion. So many known faces. So this first panel is about looking into the battery passport activities a little bit, because as we have heard from Ilias, it's the first product category that brings a product passport to the market, or is required so by law. And the idea is for all the others in the room that are not part of the battery industry to share a little bit, what are the learnings out of the battery activities, and therefore we've invited many experts on that field. And Thorsten, I want to start with you. Thorsten, you have been seconded to the Global Battery Alliance for quite some time. From the very beginning, you're also one of the pioneers in the product passport area, especially for batteries. You're now back to BASF as project manager for the battery passport. You have seen so many things. Can you tell us a little bit about what has already achieved by today? And maybe if you as BASF are ready for the DPP already, or what's the status? What have you achieved so far? And what's maybe still to come?
Thanks, Susanne.
Hast du es an?
Yeah, thanks, Susanne, for the invitation here and the warm words for welcome. Yes, before we start, where are we? We need to look where we came from. So the term digital product passport for batteries has been invented somewhere 2017, even before the battery regulation came out, as a transparency tool in the battery industry for the supply chain. That was a story at the World Economic Forum when a couple of executives met and said, hey, energy transition must come, but it must come responsible. And it must come sustainable. So in the environmental field as well as in the social field. And this transparency instrument, which should provide it, and being a certificate of the supply chain due diligence, was the battery passport. Now this term is now confused with being a digital twin, which comes from the European regulation, but that's the important thing to distinguish and not to confuse. So digital product passports are the digital twins of products. However, the information from the supply chain must come in. So consequently, we as industry are facing two issues. Number one is how to define a digital product passport. So now we are at the stage with all the projects like Battery Pass, like Surpass, like the Global Battery Alliance, to define what can be the digital twin of the battery. And that is now pretty well defined with all the work which has published recently, even down to the data model from the Battery Pass. With the Global Battery Alliance, we were already able to show how the data move through the value chain. And I can tell you, nothing is more instructive than learning by doing. This whole story is too complex to just solve it at the desk. Therefore, we need more and more pilot projects that we learn how we can establish the supply chain transparency and how can we manage to show the digital product passport as a digital twin at the level of the company who is bringing the product to the markets. And that's where we stay at the moment. We have fantastic projects now in the pipeline. Catena-X, first and foremost to mention, as a data space on the technical side, but also we are maturing in the content part where we define more and more how can the data be presented. Nonetheless, we are facing a lot of difficulties of the not yet defined things. Many data fields are required by legislation which are not yet defined, where we are really struggling to give meaning to the data.
Can you give us an example?
So for example, we're struggling about carbon footprint. So many industries are reporting carbon footprint already, and in batteries regulation, the discussion is that we're talking about a circular footprint formula, which is giving you the entire life cycle, rather than having the cradle to gate information, which would be really the one which you need as a transparency to steer value chains. So what you measure, you can manage, and what you manage will change. And if you want to improve your carbon footprint, you need to know what's your contribution and what's in your hands, not what may happen somewhere in 15 years when a battery reaches end of life in the recycling.
So basically, you have to agree on a model how to calculate the carbon footprint, because there are a lot of standards out there, right? We have seen several, but we have to decide which ones to take.
Yeah, and that's right. The problem what you're mentioning, you have several standards, and if you have several standards for the same thing, you don't have a standard, and that has to be agreed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thorsten, maybe give us just a few more insights about BASF, because it's such an interesting company in these days, because you are not only a chemistry company, as everyone knows you, but you're also producing batteries, and you're also a recycling company of batteries. So how is it for you? How do you prepare, other than we've already heard, as these, with these different niches that you're working in?
Yeah, so from our businesses, we are active in the cathode active material, where we purchase the raw materials from the mining industry. Then that is then going to cell producers. On the other hand, we have a trade agreement for stationary battery systems, that we are the economic operator bringing batteries into the market ourselves. Different unit, different colleagues, and we have a business emerging in recycling. So that is covering then the closing of the loop to the cathode active materials. And with all these businesses, we are, of course, involved in Catena-X, and one of my colleagues has managed the pilot project for the battery passport there, and there we learned a lot what it takes and what you should better not do in establishing such a prototype. We're involved in the Battery Pass project, where we're defining those elements. And I myself am currently chairing the DIN-SPEC consortium, which is defining the content of the battery passport in the, first in the European setting, proposing the content guidance for the battery passport. Nonetheless, there especially we have seen many of the things, especially if it comes to the technical parameters, are not yet specified. How do you measure a certain parameter?
So maybe that's a really nice. Thank you, Torsten, and great to have you here. So pick Torsten in the breaks if you need to understand more details on that. But it's a nice handover from the Dean Spec 99100. It is. Where is it coming from? Where's the foundation coming from? And therefore, I want to introduce Niklas Niemann here. I'm glad to have you, Niklas. Niklas is partner at Systemic, and Systemic is actually leading the world famous battery pass consortium and project, which has been actually the best research project that I've seen in the past years, especially the quality of the outcome of it. And one of it was also the attributes for the battery passport, but I don't want to give your speech. So please, Niklas, explain us a little bit about the project and maybe what else you're planning at Systemic to make the world a bit more circular.
I think you're giving a bit too much credit to me. So first, thanks for having me here on the stage. But I would like to take a step back. So what did we try to do? And Ilias made it very clear. We try to prevent climate change. And if I look out in the world just the last few days, I think we have 4 or 5 countries flooded in Europe. We have 11 people dead. And so far, I've not heard anything from some politicians who said just in the last flooding, oh, nobody was kind of able to expect that. Right? So all that we do here, it's all very technical, it's all very specialized. But just be clear, we're trying to save lives. And I think one of the flooding was now dubbed the millennia flood because it reached a Regelstand that was never reached before, not even in the last 30, 50 years. So that's for me one. So whatever we do here, it's a nice class meeting, so to say. I'm not really part of the class because my team has done that already 2 years before I joined the company. And on the other hand, we see people pushing back. Who of you remembers Unilever? See anyone from Unilever? So Unilever used to be for all of us the poster child in ESG, I think until yesterday. I'm not sure whether you read the LinkedIn post, but the ESG agenda of Unilever is massively pushed back by the new board and the new owners. Or you think about automotive, I think just in the last 24 hours, there was again a pushback against, sorry for my German English, Flottengrenzwerte, fleet limits. So it's not like people all agree with us. If we go out in the world, we now try, I don't know, we go to Niederösterreich, we try to explain what we do here, and somebody says, explain to me the Dienstspec, and then probably people will say, wait, my house is under fire or under water. So it's not a means to an end, it's what we do this to prevent climate change. And I think Ilias made it very clear, we need it for all products. Circular economy is not a means to an end. Circular economy is the only thing that we can do to prevent the triple crisis. So what I'm looking for is that Battery Pass paves the way to a lot of digital product passports. And I think we saw the agenda, textile, built environment, steel, aluminium. I'm looking forward to that. So what is Systemic trying to do? Systemic as a company was founded 8 years ago after Paris, after the Paris COP, by 2 former McKinsey senior partners as a system change company. And now it's getting complex. You ask 5 of my colleagues what we are, and you will probably get 7 answers, depending on when you ask them. So we are kind of a combination between a think tank, a coalition builder, and a consultancy. And depending on who you talk to, the focus is a bit different. What I would say is we are the ones that try to bring idealism into business, and I believe we have to bring it into business. If I look at Unilever, if I look at automotive, as long as if it's just a regulatory ESG agenda, it's not going to work. And this is why in the Battery Pass Consortium that Systemic has and had the honor to lead, we're bringing together companies that try to make clear, yes, we need obligatory regulation as the Battery Pass battery regulation, but we also want to make clear as a company, you can earn money out of it. And if you manage to do that, then you can convince people, because Unilever at the moment, I'm sorry that I'm bashing Unilever, I hope you don't mind. It's basically saying profits first, very simplified. At least that's what I read.
Yeah, but maybe let's go into the dialogue with this, because probably everyone who sits in this room is open to spend a bit of more money for circular products. But maybe not everyone can do that, and the mass really needs circular business models that work with circular products. And I think that's something that you also wanted to share a little bit about.
Yeah, if you think about what people are willing, I think Ilias had a slide on it, right? He said if you ask people when they go into the shop, they would say it's quality, it's price, it's sustainability. And the moment they take the decision, it's quality, then price and sustainability at the very end. So I believe it's very difficult. The second thing is, and this is where I believe digital product passports are super important, is to make clear how to create value in the value chain and distribute it. The standard example would be you go to an automotive company and tell Audi or Stellantis, please build the car in a circular way. Then the engineer will tell you, I'm trying to get 50 cents out of that car. And if I build it circular, I don't have a business case, because the one who profits from the circularity is Susanne if she recycles it or repurposes at the end. So the automotive companies will not push circular because it's a business case, as long as they don't really make money out of it. So, and just to close it, so what is Systemic trying to do with the battery pass consortia? So we are now, I would say, on the last meters for finalization. We will update the value assessment end of September, update it on the webpage then. We aim for the final big closing event in February, March in Brussels. We had a big event in Hannover Trade Fair this year in April. Feels like ages ago, but we were there. And finally, the battery pass, I mean, that's always funny if I'm on a conference, people say, you're leading the battery pass consortia. Can I buy a battery pass from you? I say, no, you can't, because we are consortia. We bring together people that work on it how it should be. But yes, Systemic together with VDE Renewables and PricewaterhouseCoopers, we also want to bring it to the world and help people implement it. So that's what we're here for. And sorry, I will not go into details on the DIN spec today, because then probably half of the audience will just fall asleep.
No.
Okay, Dieter, then you have to do it.
And
sorry.
we have implementers of battery passports here today, and I guess those people can also be helped. So thank you for the overviews. Thank you also for bringing in the latest aspects from the news. Definitely. I want to hear a little bit the voice of the industry, which is here with Dieter Wegner. He has a lot of hats on, so I'm trying to summarize all of them. He's Vice President, External Corporations at Siemens Technology. I guess that's this main affiliation. Also expert of the DPP topic at Siemens AG generally. He's representing Industry 4.0 circle at ZV. That's by the one who don't know it. It's the German's Electrical Association, and finally, he is the chair of the BDI DPP task force, and BDI is the voice of the German industry. So we have the voice of German industry here. How is the German industry preparing for the DPP, Dieter?
First of all, I like to thank you to invite me here. I just came from Frankfurt from VDMA, because there was a second interoperability summit talking about how to get the shop floor data from the operational technology connected to the IT IoT world, and that was really interesting. But then I got this invitation, and first I said, no, it's too much for one day. But then I decided to come here, because here I think it's a perfect panel, and I'm really happy to have Niklas here, because 3 years ago, a little bit more, I met System IQ people in the team, and they explained me what they have done in their work, and I was really excited, and it was an eye-opener for me to see that the battery passport is, the industry first was not happy about that, of course. The industry is not happy about regulation at all. But the battery passport, in my mind, is present to the industry. Because why? Because the stress the EU Commission did on the industry, on the battery passport, because you can't deliver a car without a battery passport starting in February 2027. That means if you have the battery passport, digital, available on a server of your own, then you can deliver your car to your customer. If not, not. And that is, of course, stress for the industry. And that means the industry has to move. And I was talking about the industry, electric and digital industry for ZWI, VDMA, Bitkom, and so on, and BDI. And so the question is how to mobilize the industry. And we are lucky that we have the EU Commission with Ilias explained us DPP and DPP system. And when we got the first regulation, the ECBF, Eco Design Sustainable Product Regulation, I tell you only ESPR because it's shorter. The ESPR is 120-page thick document, legal text. I'm engineer, sorry, but this I can't understand. Also, I tried to read and I tried to understand, but there's one article 4 saying you must do a DPP. And when I saw this, and I have people at Siemens who have explained to me, then I understood we will do, as Ilias said, have to prepare a DPP for each product group in the long run. That's not only for these products here of Siemens or other companies, this automation equipment. No, every product. Textile, chairs, furniture, and so on. That means it is a move how to digitalize industry. Now I turned it around and say, okay, let's take, I say, intelligent judo. You know, judo means that you take the force of your enemy and you take it and mobilize the opposite person to take his force against him. And I took this for the EU. Because I take the battery passport to enable the industry to prepare itself to become ready when the EU regulation will come in place. And how did I do? And that is Thomas Knote, he's staying there. He showed me in Brussels on a meeting that he prepared a battery passport meta structure. Fancy word. That means the structure, how to design the structure for the standardization of the battery. And because I'm more than 10 years vice president of TKA standardization, I know what the effect of standardization is. So I took what Niklas said, and I took over years together with the team, and we said, okay, can we adapt the battery passport meta structure of this team, of this battery passport, to bring together and then to do it as a blueprint for the industry. And so I'm really happy. Now I'm finished. I'm happy because now we are ready to prepare ourselves as industry on Hannover Fair next year. So in 31st of March, we will present the DPP for zero / DPP for zero system. So that is the answer of the industry, what Ilias is asking for the industry DPP /
So basically, so thank you for that. First of all, the pressure that the European Commission gives, but also the use of the already existing technology that the industry 4.0 has brought up and doesn't have to throw away. I think that's an important message that we also want to give to the other industries, that please come with what you have, and then we try to make it fit to the digital product passport regulation. Is, I guess, something that we want to do in the JTC 24. Okay, thank you for that insight. Now I would like to come to you, Ian. We've heard it from Ilias also. There will be a DPP service provider. So there will be companies that support others to build the DPP, and RCS and together with CERTI, of course, have built a digital product passport and have been there from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the industry, what you also have done as part of the work of the GBA, which is, pilots first wave and maybe now second wave, and what your contribution is to that industry?
Sure, thanks, Susanna, and it's great to be here. And I'm looking forward to participating with this fantastic panel and a good discussion. So, indeed, I'm coming, or rather RCS Global comes to the challenges behind a digital product passport sort of from the ground up, from the other end. So we've actually been mapping and uncovering end-to-end raw materials supply chains since about 2016 in the battery space, and have mapped hundreds and hundreds of mine to car or mine to electronic devices. So actually slightly before the GBA was born, we were already auditing our way through China into the Atacama Desert, into Congo, etc. So I'm quite excited because for me, the digital product passport is a digitalization. So as Dieter just said, it kind of forces innovation in a whole bunch of ways. From an industry perspective, how do we standardize the data? But from an auditor perspective or from an assessor and verifier of data perspective, it forces us to take data and to obtain real data, believable data, trustable data, and put that on a global stage to ideally measure and improve sustainability and circularity. So there's a lot of buzzwords going on there. What does it mean in practice? It means know your supply chain, start. So I think there's a real problem, particularly in Germany, the proud home of engineering and over-engineering, to first design the process and the system, and then run into the problems of the supply chain. We see this time and again. So we've worked with over 10 of the largest OEMs in the world, and I can say that no supply chain is the same. The supply chain is not a unitary actor. You cannot ask your supply chain, hey, how do you feel about a passport? Because depending if it's BASF or if it's Ford Motor Company or if it's Glencore Trading Arm, et cetera, they will have different interests. But what's interesting, and Susanna, I'm glad you asked about the industry associations, and I would like to put a shout out to the Battery Pass Consortia. Actually, we've been taking the technical content guidance and gathering data as part of the pilots that we've been doing. In the same way, these rule books that the GBA has been working on is starting to give us a common language, a common set of indicators and measurable aspects that we can add to a passport. So people ask me time and again, well, what should I do? And the very clear answer has to be the same as what Torsten gave at the beginning, namely start. Because once you start learning. And we've seen this, that from Chinese companies to North American companies to Europe-based companies, they're all beginning to map their supply chains. Then we add complicated varying definitions of CO2 and how to measure it, and do we take the post-use phase, etc. But it doesn't matter. If you have begun building trust, undertaking the activities required to obtain transparency in the supply chain, you can start to build on that with whatever technology you want, actually. Solve the problem first and build the tech later. I think this is very important. So this is where we come at this from.
Yeah, I think transparency and the supply chain, I think it always has some dynamite in it because, of course, manufacturers probably do not want to give all the transparency, also not manufacturers of pre-products, but for the digital product passport, we need the data. So how do we deal with data that we need in the digital product passport that the supply chain does not want to give us? And I think you play an important role there because I see the issue also in all other industries. So please give us an insight about that, Ian.
Yeah, like I said, trust is a fairly rare good in supply chains. So at the end of the day, you want perfect transparency to understand how sustainable your product is, but it's sometimes in the opposite direction of the commercial interests of the parties in the supply chain. So you need trusted third-party instances who don't have any skin in the game, so to speak. I don't care if this Chinese manufacturer sells more to this European manufacturer or to this American buyer. As an auditor, as a company that is about assuring the realness, the veracity of that data, that's absolutely key. And that has been key before digital product passports, and that will continue to be key. So I see this in the Catena X and some fantastic work going there, right? So there's a lot of focus on primary data. Great, yeah? Like I'll ask Torsten, how sustainable are you, Torsten? And he'll give me a 7. What does that mean? So that's nice. Torsten's quite sustainable, but what does that 7 mean? Like who actually stamps that? So it's absolutely key to have independent and neutral bodies that are able to verify the correctness of the data and assure it. And this is particularly important given the geopolitical realities at the moment.
Yeah, and you're also playing, I'm always saying, a buffer in the industry from those who want to hide stuff and those who want to get stuff. So very important role that RCS and companies like them play. Last but not least, we have Daniel Montfort here from BRGM, and he's also leading the MediTrace project. Daniel, you're at the very beginning of the battery supply chain, and you're, representing mining for me in this group, kind of. Although, of course, you're not from a mine; you're a researcher, but still, what if you would be the voice of the mining? What would be your say for the digital product passport? What are your challenges as the raw material provider to that game?
Well, thank you. I'm not representing mining, but yes, I'm geologist, so I'm close to mining sector, let's say. And what we can see already from mining sector across the world is that, for example, questions about carbon footprint, water footprint are more and more important for them. So if you speak with all big metals alliance, copper alliance, aluminum alliance, nickel alliance, all these teams are really working hardly to assess in terms of LCA, but also not only LCA or carbon footprint or water footprint and methodology. And there are many methodological discussions, of course, and also which is the type of information of mining sector, which is the type of information that they can deliver to their client and at the end to DPP. Of course, if you are a mining company that you are doing better than your competitors because you put in place PV panels and maybe you have a better CO2 footprint, for sure you want that this information is communicated to DPP because maybe it's a sort of your benefit. And for sure, that means that you need a system that implicates that I'm delivering this information to my clients, but not putting myself in any risk or for sure. But yeah, raw material sector is working a lot on that. But that's only a part of the question, I will say. In the presentation of the Commission, we spoke a lot about eco-design and circularity and recycling and circular economy in general. But yes, the elephant in the room is that we need raw materials from mining, and we need a lot of raw materials from mining, and that means also that we need. And Europe is not producing, or very few. We don't have lithium mines in Europe. We have several cobalt mines in Finland, a little one in Spain. That's the reality. So we need raw materials coming from this famous supply chain, which is very complex. And in DPP, we can also imagine not only to deliver an information about circularity or eco-design or the bill of materials of this battery, but also we can imagine, that's something that we are working in this project MediTrace, is okay, which are the due diligence aspects behind these raw materials. It is the lithium of in my battery. I can communicate this information to my clients that this lithium comes from a mining that is respecting the legislation in place in the country of the origin, or maybe they are doing it better, because in some cases there are certification of sustainable mining, which are a little bit better than the legislation. And that's a type of information that, is appearing in the DPP landscape, but not all the metals, not all the materials are following the same direction. For example, in lithium, there is a huge movement in this direction. So lithium companies, they around the world really want to do better, because lithium is a metal which is really associated to energy transition. It's not the same case for graphite, it's not the same case for cobalt, it's not the same case for other metals where the situation is much more complex.
Okay, so you're saying, but I think in the discussion that we had before is also that you have different industries that you need to serve, right? And then different industries need different due diligence reports. Do you want to say one last word before we go to the questions about that challenge of the mining sector?
Yes, for sure. Due diligence, there is the guidelines from OECD that many companies must follow, and these guidelines are followed by many companies. But also these companies, and imagine a little manufacturer company this you are buying materials to a traders or in the global market, but you don't have enough power to make changes in a refinery plant in China. You don't have this power. So at the end, you are completely depending on this very complex supply chain system. Maybe if you are a big one, but even big ones, they have also several reputational risks on this topic. So it is a very complex thing. So yeah, for example, if you speak with OECD people, they say, yeah, we want that with these due diligence frameworks, we are trying that things will go better around the world, but that's very slowly.
Okay, so you're saying there's a lot of things to do. We have 2 to 3 minutes, 5 minutes for questions. I think from the audience. Are there questions from the audience to our panelists? Do we have a question?
If not, I would say something to mining.
Yeah, if you want, and I think Dieter also had a short comment, because then we are already moving into the next
Just a
panel.
short comment. I fully agree with what you said, but I would also link it to what you said. The mining sector is not homogeneous. Systemic did an event just before the summer break, bringing together several mining players across the world in London for a Chatham House Rules table discussion about what is the role of recycling. And of course, they all agree we need a lot of virgin mined material for the energy transition. But there's one key report of RMI that says, wonderful tagline, mine it once, recycle forever. So it's not like oil and gas where you have to do it every year again. And I agree with Ilias, who says recycling is the least that you want to do, but you have to do a lot before. But even the mining companies on the table. So one mining company said, we understand that our business model comes to an end, maybe not in 2 years, maybe in 10, and we want to become a circular economy solution provider. So they want to keep control of the materials throughout the supply chain, throughout the value chain, end of life, and so on.
They have know-how.
For that, they need digital product passports. Another mining company said, circular economy, we hope we see as little as possible of that in the world, because then we can sell more of our stuff. And it's a complex world, because of course, if you as customers would be willing, or us, to pay more for recycled material, they would probably do it. But if not, then they say, okay, we make 30% margin on virgin. Why should we change a thing? So it's
thank you. And Dieter had a comment, and maybe one last comment, unless we have a question in the audience.
In your statement, Susanne, you mentioned that the industry is in general not willing to share data. Yes, but there are a way to share data. So, for example, what Ilias said, there will be requirements coming from the EU Commission which will become legal. So we have to share these data which are defined by the EU. But there are other data which are very crucial and important for the supply chain, and to optimize the supply chain with respect to the circular economy, which the economic operators along the life chain not share, or are not willing to share. But if they get money for this, they are willing to share, and that is depending on the price. And that is what I think DPP for zero is an enabler for digital, for data economy, and for circular economy. Because when you think about it, what you mentioned on the example of the material and recycling, you need more data than the EU is asking for by regulation. So what you need data, and the industry doesn't share. But if you say you get money for this data sharing, and you are economic operator in a mining process, you can share and you get money for this data because of your know-how. And that is that's driving a digital economy, a data economy. And the prices, I don't know yet, but they will come by market mechanism.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, that we need new business models, I think stands across the entire situation, and also this event. Data economy is one. I like the word "our economies" that I heard lately. So that's important. And one last comment from Thorsten.
We shouldn't think about the economy only in data. There will be a real economy in the background, which is really restructuring material flows, which is restructuring steel and concrete processes, and the chemical industry will be the core of that. So if you look at all the products in the European market, 96% of the products contain chemical intermediates. And therefore, it is of critical importance to make a really structured, harmonized and standardized approach to the reporting, that we can make use of the information and bring all the materials from the different industries back together in the same pot, that it can go round in the circle, including repair, including remanufacturing, and in the end, of course, recycling.
And with the digital product passport, we have much, much more information than we have today to make all that possible. So I'm ending probably that first panel. Thank you for my panelists. It's really great to have you here today. Such great speakers. And therefore, I hand over the microphone back to Eliana, who will lead us into the second panel. Thanks again, and please give a big hand for our panelists.
So welcome to the second panel where we will discuss the intersectoral digital product passports and the role of digital passport in a circular economy. And I think I will start with Caroline. Caroline, you're the coordinator of the project, the CirPass, the heart, I would say so, of the digital product passport topic in the EU. You are aware about all the movements in that topic. Could you please explain us a bit more about the new CirPass 2 project that were announced earlier this year in May? What are the aims, what you address, about the pilots, maybe some words?
Yes, so I could talk hours about CirPass 2. Try to summarize in 5 minutes. So
we have time, so
yeah. So CirPass 1 was about a theoretical description of what the proposal for the DPP system. The proposal was a first draft. The whole point of making a first draft is to have people throw rocks at it and to make it better. I hope that we will work with Sensenelec soon to contribute to the standardization of the DPP system. On our side, we continue to throw ideas to improve the architecture. And but CirPass 2 is about piloting large-scale, real-life, and B2B contexts. And there are 4 value chains that we are addressing. So textiles, construction products, tires, and electrical and electronic equipment. And there are 13 different groups. Mm-hmm. So each pilot is actually an ecosystem of partners. Mm-hmm. An interesting thing is that each pilot is led, almost every pilot is led by a potential DPP solution provider. And so in the context of the project, this dozen solution providers is collaborating, working together with their competitors towards an interoperable system. And the target in CirPass 2, what's really interesting about it, is that what we want to prove at the end is that we have we demonstrate that our pilots are interoperable. Yeah. And so I always say that the DPP is a semantic interoperability problem. And I think the last speaker of the last panel spoke about this. So making sure that the data has meaning, transports the meaning with the data. This is very important. And also another element of CirPass 2 is we will both be focusing on regulatory compliance and on beyond regulatory compliant DPPs. So addressing product segments where there's no immediate regulatory objective.
Mm-hmm. Could you say us a bit maybe more about the pilots? What are the nature of the certain pilots? What are about they are?
So the nature. So there are some pilots focusing on garments, resell or recycling, for example. So when we chose the pilots, we chose different circular strategies that each pilot would be focusing on. So for example, there is one pilot focusing on workwear, so professional clothing. Mm-hmm. and focusing on a leasing type of business model. So it's really a product as a service type of business model that is enabled by the DPP. In all of the pilots, the focus is on B2B. Yeah. So it's not so much a DPP for consumers, but it's really a DPP to enable circularity. And because I believe that the reason why we need so many DPP solution providers, and we're working hard to support all of these companies that are deploying DPPs, is that DPP is about using data to do something circular, to have a circular output. And the circular output is extending product lifetime, material efficiency. And this requires hands-on work in repair shops and sorting stations, and this is very interacting, like in using data, but to enable human activity because this is very intensive work to repair products and sort products, requires a lot of work, and anything that makes this more efficient makes these business models slightly more realistic, and hopefully will help them get deployed in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. So talking about the pilots, I'm looking at the Femke. Femke, you are representing today the Everydenizen. And Everydenizen is strongly involved in RFID technology. Could you maybe tell us what is it about the RFID technology, and maybe about the pilot that you are, when you are partnering with Circular Fashion, right? And you are also one of the pilots in the Circus. Could you please just tell them more about it?
Sure. Let me just talk a little bit on how we work together within Circulas. Everydenizen is a very large organization, but one of the solutions that we bring to market is from a connected data platform. So you could categorize as a technology provider, solution provider, what we just mentioned. So in one of the pilots, textile pilots, we are co-leading this with Circular Fashion in Berlin. So that pilot is very much dedicated to drive recycling, and which is needed with all the piles of textile that is there, and we don't want to export it outside the borders of Europe. It needs to be sorted, recycled within Europe, and then ideally, if we do that in a qualitative, right, and consistent way, we can use it for like virgin material again. And I think that is the essence of a circular economy, and actually scaling and making profitable business models to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's an honor to work on those pilots. We do that with a lot of stakeholders in the industry. Sometimes we have already established a working relationship with them because there is a whatever relation, and sometimes they're new ecosystem partners, but it's very interesting to see how all the facets that are needed to get to data accuracy, get to actually processes that work in real. And this is the time to pilot. And then you also understand the complexity, what data is needed, how do you get it connected to the product, how does it stay with the product so it's still achievable or accessible when you come to a product's end of life. And this is quite interesting to then start looking at the data carrier element of this.
But what do you think, why especially RAIN RFID technology is the perfect and the strongest fit to the digital passport?
Yeah, what is quite interesting, because very often we think or talk about DPP with the consumer, having the consumer in mind. And this is not really the area where RFID is that strong at this moment. RFID technology, ultra high frequency technology, is, I think, so many people consciously, unconsciously know, because we use it a lot to tag products with, so we can actually follow them throughout their life. But funny enough, we stop often tracking our products until the point of sale. Mm-hmm. So if I'm just thinking about textiles, everybody shops in these big retailers, and then you cannot leave the room or the shop without paying for it, because then your alarm will go off. If you can't see the alarm, you know that something somewhere is connected to the product. Very often that is an RFID tracker. Same as with the parcels, you digitize your parcel, and you know actually where it is in the supply chain, so you have visibility to the actual status of the product. So what is quite interesting with RFID technology, if you start using it beyond the point of sale, then you actually have a tracer that can stick with a product throughout its end of its life and be able to make that accessible to all these different users in this process, make it accessible to sorters so they can optimize the sorting, going from doing it manual to doing it digital at a very high speed, up to the point of recycling. So this is where the RFID technology has a huge proof of optimizing and commercial viability for warehousing, for distributions, and a huge profitability has been there for companies. So we need that for driving circularity. So what if we start using this technology to scale these practices? And that was so many times it said, why are these circular business models not up to scale? Well, we can help them automate them by this type of activities.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. Marion, we have ladies first, gentlemen here after. Marion, you're representing the Unilever, and you're preparing also for the upcoming regulation. Maybe can you elaborate a bit about how do you preparing for that?
Yeah, sure, I can. As a Unilever, and especially I'm in the detergent sector of Unilever, we are looking into what is indeed coming to us, but not only from ESPR. The first thing that we'll get is actually the detergent regulation, as mentioned by Ilias, which is more compliance-driven and information for consumers on what's in their product, more like the ingredients and so on, and not so much yet on carbon footprint. And what we're doing as Unilever is try to understand what would it mean for us, what if those data would come, both from the detergent regulation, but also from ESPR. What would it mean for us? How can we get the data? What structure do we need to set up to internally, the IT structure and so on, to make it happen and to have the digital product passport deployed? How can we have an interesting, valuable interface, not only for regulators, because part of it will be for regulators, for customs and so on, but also for consumers. So we're looking into what does it mean? How do we get data, good quality data? That's what I heard today as well. It's very important. But also how, where do we get them? What don't we have yet? How do we interact with our suppliers to get data if needed? So we're looking actually in what would the implications of DPP be, and how would we need to design our systems to be ready in the near future.
I also think that for Unilever, as for other companies that will be under the regulation of ESPR and battery passport, it's important the gradual transition to the digital passport. How do you think? How Unilever is preparing for this roll-up, this gradual roll-up in that direction?
Yeah, what we do internally, we compare the digital product passport transformation to a glass house, moving from a current building. Few windows in there, limited visibility, we move to a glass house. And if you rebuild something, if you do everything at once, the thing might collapse. So we really want to see how you can make something more gradual. It's quite complex. We actually don't know the details of the data yet. We only have, the legislation isn't finalized. ESPR is definitely still in its infancy. So we really would call on regulators to see how you can how you don't implement everything at once, because we need to learn. It needs to be iterative. We need to learn while we're going, what implications are, how we can best do things, and in that way, we learn and we can adapt. And that's important. What we want to do is actually have a system where in the future there will be more data requirements, but then we can plug in new data as we go in the future. So design something where is adapted to new data. And also, I'm talking for detergents, but we also have a cosmetics industry, shampoo, deo, and so on. They will come as well with ESPR, probably after detergents, to be seen with the work plan. But we want to have a system that works for all of our business groups, not something just for the one I'm responsible for, but we're looking internally how we can make something that in the end is usable for all business groups. Which also, I'm just now thinking about the RFID part. We will probably need to go to a QR code because we are, it's going to be for the consumers, and RFIDs are currently too expensive anyway for our product groups. but we need to have a QR code, and we need to think over, if you have fast-moving consumer goods and you're in the shop as a consumer, you want the same interface in the end for all those products. So we need to think over how we align across industries and how we make things accessible for consumers in the end.
Yeah, that's actually, it's also a question what Femke, I wanted to ask you about the consumer access and the RFID role here. So how do you think, like what is the situation there? So what do you see, which industries are more likable for RFID use and which are for the products like, for example, cosmetics and home detergents, it's more for the QR codes?
Now, it's one point is very true. If it's a hard requirement to have the DPP read by a consumer, then you have a dependency on reading it with your phone.
Yeah.
So RFID technology is a business-to-business solution widely. So it's read through scanners. But the industry is so aware of the DPP opportunity. And this is interesting why we work very close with the RAIN RFID Alliance, because it's an industry transformation as well to make RFID technology read by phones, build these collaborations with phone companies so that that collaboration is coming to life. And that's a technical evolution that in parallel of all these transformations is happening. So this is, I think the RFID world is aware and is recognizing this shortcoming and is making steps to become readable by phone. The first adapters of RFID technology were heavily in the textile segment. So our big customers are very much in the textile segment. What we do see that it needs a maturity level to use the technology, not only to drive commercial efficiencies in your warehousing and logistics, but actually start using it for circularity. Yeah. And we see that with all our customers. There's a few out there that are really looking at technology as a driver of circularity. But those are just a few out there. It's definitely a gap that the people that work on transformation do not automatically connected to their ESG strategy, to enabling circularity or their new circular business models. So this is why it's so important to get out of the comfort zone of your own company with your own customers, but be active in the wider industry, work with your competitors, because only together you can move the industry forward. So yes, also on the technical front, there's work that the industry is doing.
Yeah, it's a lot. We're all waiting, I think, when it will be the new delegated text from the ESPR, where we can see the standards about the standards, what we will talk now with you, with the GS1, and standards about the data carriers. Thomas, you're the CEO of the GS1 Germany. My question to you is, your GS1 is known for the global standards, and could you start by telling how already existing GS1 standards might be reused for digital passport technologies now? And what do you think about that?
First of all, thanks for having me here.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that GS1 is well known. We are normally the best kept secret, but our product is well known because on most of the product is our barcode, like the Unilever products, or if you look to that fridge over there, we will be directly confronted with our standards. And more than close to 100,000 companies in Germany are relying on these standards, and more than 2 million on planet Earth are working with these standards. So they drive efficiency every day, and there's a good reason for that standards drive efficiency. Going back to London at 1860 something, when they invented the first traffic light, it was a good idea to say, if it's on the upper side, red, stop, and if it's on the lower side, green, walk. So this standard is very well established. In some countries it's a rule, in other countries it's a friendly recommendation, but at the end of the day you know how to behave, and this is standard. Standard for me is this is what was coming out of that panel and the panel before. Standard is really the hard work on little things to make the simple possible on a very large scale. And this is what you only can achieve together. Nobody can do this alone, and nobody can do this in a proprietary way, because then it ends at the boundary of your company. And if we talk about DPT and the standards in a DPP, it's for sure that it runs through multiple companies and multiple industries. So I would even say an industry-specific DPP is at the very end some type of nonsense, because if you talk about circular economy, it starts when we build the product and we bring it through the supply chain and to the demand side to the shopper, and then it's going back and reuse and recycling. And if you talk about circular economy, then we are talking about standards that everybody can understand the other one. And one comment to that, I'm not a strong believer that we will see one solution fits all, like we have in business to consumer with Google and Facebook and Twitter and these other applications. And what we are talking here, we will see a different dynamic. We will have lots of solutions, lots of platforms, and they have to work together in the circular economy. And therefore, we need to agree on a certain level of standards, how we identify products, how we put data alongside, capture data, and how we share this data. And this should work any to any at the very end of the day. So we need to be interoperable in what we are doing. So the traditional platform idea, I build a platform, and if everybody is doing it like I am doing it, and then we have a standard, will not work, because we start this 10 or 20 times in parallel. So we have to carefully think about, and this is what we are doing in all the initiatives, on all the different layers, how we will become interoperable. Otherwise, I think it will not work. And then we have standards to identify products. In our case, the Global Trade Item Number, the GTIN, identifies a product. But then we have batch, like with Unilever, on a batch level. And then we have to go on serialization. So if I go to the battery, what we discussed in the panel beforehand, I mean, a battery will be a serialized product. It's not a battery, it's the battery in the life cycle. And depending who is doing what with that battery through the life cycle, you have to be capable to add information to that specific battery. So you have to create events through the entire life cycle in different systems, on different platforms, but you have to bring it together. And the third strange element is do this on a secure way, that information is only given to people who needs this information and not to everybody. So security will be a big topic. And I think things like SSI, self-sovereign identities, will become more and more important on that topic. Give you a small example. If you buy alcohol in the stores here, you have to be above 18. If you go today to the store, they say, can I see your passport, please? And they check if you're above 18. But this is not really needed. The information they need is only, is this person above 18? Nobody needs the birthday. It's just yes or no, above 18, yes or no. And this is what I mean with self-sovereign identities, that we are very clear on which information we pass to whom and which information is really needed. And is the information as such enough, or do we need it in more detail? So this will be a topic of an own evening, I would say. But last but not least, standards are driving efficiencies. Yes.
One question before we start with Karsten. Thomas, the cost factor is also an important factor, because implementation of digital passport can be also very costly. How do you think, and how GS1 is taking this into account? What role plays international standards, GS1 standards, in reducing the cost of DPP implementation?
The good thing is, if you are using standards and can you reuse them for a second or a third purpose, this is obvious that this drives efficiency. So we discussed a lot about the DPP, but here a lot of discussions as well. If we do the DPP, what else we can do with it? And that's what you said on your Unilever detergents products, customer information, additional information on that product. And I think this becomes very important, that we don't see DPP as an isolated regulation burden, so that we think about what in addition can we do if we have to do this DPP anyhow, on consumer interactions, on additional informations, and so on and so forth. And what you said, a data model which can be monetized, and so on and so forth. I think this is important. And the same thing, like if it came to RFID, what you said. If you only have a single purpose for RFID, then it's difficult to calculate. But you said RFID can be used for different purposes. CNA is a great example of what they do in their textiles through the supply chain with RFID. but they have a minimum 5 business cases alongside this little tech. And all of a sudden, it makes sense to do it. And the same I would recommend for DPP. Yes, we have to do it for regulatory purposes, but what can we do in addition with it? If we have this one code on the package, what else can we do with it? And do me a favor, don't discuss and agree on things that at the end of the day, you have to have 5 codes on a product package. Yeah, but you're laughing, but this is starting. We need one for the checkout. We need additional one for the DPP. Then we need a third one for detergents regulation. Then we need a 4th one for the next regulation, and so on and so forth. We all have to sit together saying, let's agree on how we can utilize what we have. And ideal would be one code, 1,000 purposes. And this drives efficiency as well. And then it's not that costly. Yeah. Otherwise, it will become a mess.
Sure. And sure, non-mandatory data are important to enable the circular economy. And here, Karsten, the initiator of Circular Valley, you brought the circular economy topic here in our region. And Circular Valley is a home for different startups from different range of circular economy and the corners of circular economy. Can you please tell us what is happening there? Is there any digital product passport startups that you have, and how it can leverage the circular economy in general?
First of all, thank you very much, Iliana, for having me. So you mentioned Circular Valley is actually this region. Cologne is part of the Circular Valley, so the Rhine-Ruhr region, as the largest industrialized metropolitan area in Europe, is quite unique for attracting startups from all over the world who are working on, we call it 5 verticals. One is building material, the next one is capital goods, then we got consumer goods, agriculture, and water. And I would say at least 4 out of those 5 verticals have a high linkage to the DPP, because in building material you have all the building information management. Then in capital goods and in consumer goods, you, as we just learned, will want to know what's inside. And ideally also for agriculture products, you know what's in. It's water is a bit troublesome to identify because it's like bulk, and but otherwise the startups we are having, be they recyclers, be they waste managers, all actually would want to know what is in the material. As long as we are growing into more and more varieties of our products, we'll need information what's in there. So out of the 105 startups we had in the last 3 years, I would say 5 to 7 have a focus on digital product passport. Just recently, VCGAI trying to understand the flow of material all along the value chain, but ultimately each and every startup will need it if they really want to move towards a circular economy.
So if while DPP is often checked from the perspective, from the side of compliance and sustainability, you mean that there are also additional values that digital passport can bring in a circular economy? Like what do you mean? Like what kind of the value or circular, maybe additional circular business models digital passport can open for us?
Yeah, as the co-panelists very clearly have laid out, without understanding what's inside a particular project, we will not be able to have it in a circle. There may be 2 alternatives. One is we do everything totally standardized and no varieties, but this is obviously no option. And the other one would be that we really rewind all the value chains that we have, in the sense of that we do a deconstruction in the very way as we today construct and produce stuff. But again, that is also no option, because it would mean you give everything back to the party you have received it from. So you take the Volkswagen, give it back to Volkswagen, and they deconstruct it and give the catalyst to BASF, and they run the whole film backwards. Well, this is no option. So if you really want to have a competition in the whole recycling industry, then this can only be done by understanding what's inside within all the realms of confidentiality. I mean, it sounds so easy, just add to the product how it has been constructed and what's inside. But obviously that is in many cases the secret source of the producers. So they will not want to share. And that is the balance we'll need to strike. On the one hand, enable other parties to recycle, to reuse, to refurbish, and at the same time maintain the competitiveness of especially the companies we have here in Europe and which still are ahead.
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Carsten. Thank you very much. Caroline, you was talking about the 13 pilots, right? And the importance of interoperability because it's the main object of the CIRPAS 2. Have you faced challenges in enabling the interoperability and the communication between these startups and the alignment between startups, pilots, the certain pilots, in the sense of interoperability?
So the way we will tackle this is that each pilot will focus on a certain limited data set, which we'll call the regulatory data set, and can build with their ecosystem a larger data set to enable some kind of the business model that they want to enable. So we have this two-part vision. So this core regulatory data set, whatever the product category is, and this other data set that is agreed upon by the pilot ecosystem. And so the way we will tackle interoperability, cross-pilot interoperability, is we want to prove that I have a generic DPP reading app that is able to read all of the DPPs and access I'm a consumer, so I access the public data, not the data that will be shared in the B2B context to enable circularity. So this is what we will show in the end, is that me as a consumer, I can access the tire DPP, I can access the tumble dryer DPP and the garments or mattress DPP, and I get the data. I just get the data. And that's where we want to, with the same app, that's where we want to show in the end. And we believe that such DPP reading apps, there will be many. So, did I answer your question?
Yes, I think it gives the direction to think.
And there's another aspect to your question is semantic interoperability, what it is and how to enable that, and I don't have enough time to answer that part.
Yes, I understand.
But I made a video on the topic that we presented last March during your final event. And also I will soon make a new video that will explain what it is that CIRPAS proposal for the DPP system, because I realized that most people did not read the 80-page documents that we produced. So CIRPAS 1 produced many documents, and sometimes a lot of detail is stuck in lots of very big and thick documents, difficult to read, and to really understand. So I will soon make a new video explaining in 15 minutes, what is it exactly that CIRPAS 1 proposes, and then, which is, like I said again, just a proposal. It is there to throw rocks at and to improve, and this is what we're continuously doing.
Maybe it's like a philosophical question what I will ask now. It's about the GS1 and the DPP. Is it possible, or will the DPP maybe one day merge with the GS1 codes to have this harmonization and to enable the easiness of the digital, like for example on the packaging, the codes of the GS1? Is it possible to merge with that codes to ease the DPP?
Shall I take it? So in the proposal that CIRPAS 1 made for what we call product identifier interoperability, because the word interoperability by itself doesn't mean anything, so you have to qualify it. So identifier interoperability, in the proposal that we made, we can definitely reuse GS1 GTINs, for example, as part of the product identifier. It's one of the possible product identification standards that could be used. And the way we formulated our definition of product identifier interoperability, it does not exclude other schemes which can be transformed into a web link if it's not already a web link. So,
yeah.
Clear?
Clear? We need to ask here.
Is this clear?
One addition
yes.
to what you said, that's exactly right. GS1 is just one out of a couple of issuers of interoperable identification schemes. And as I said, even if 100,000 companies in Germany are using GS1, of course they want to reuse what they have for the DPP. But we have more than 100,000 companies in Germany, a couple of more, they have something different. Most of them perhaps have something proprietary. This would be difficult in a DPP, but some of them have other identifiers, other identification schemes, which are interoperable, and it's fine to use them. As long as you know what's coming and what I'm sending, and you can interpret it and work with it from one platform to the other, then it works. And the second point with the multi-purpose, you exactly made this example. If I, as a consumer, scan a QR code on a product or tap my telephone to an RFID tag, both are data carriers, you want to get consumer-ready information. If one of the BASF or Siemens technicians is tapping the same code, he needs to get different type of information about that product. Or if a dealer is tapping the same code, he needs different information, and so on and so forth. That's what I mean if I say, try to build standards that out of one code, you have 1,000 possibilities what to do with it. And one of it is the DPP, and 999 others are possible as well.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas and Caroline. It was, I mean, it's a philosophical question, so you cannot answer direct, but yeah. The digital passport will include the upstream and downstream data, right? And Mario, talking about the downstream data, how will it help Unilever to this data? How it will help you to integrate or communicate with the recycling systems, the local recycling systems? Do you plan anything that will enable this part of circular economy? Especially when it's about the complex of the packaging in the cosmetics and the home care goods.
There are technologies for that. I'm not sure if the DPP is the right one if you talk about the QR codes, because there are watermarking technologies and so on that you could do on your label. So I think if you talk about DPP specifically, and imagine it's a QR code because we need to communicate with consumers. What we can do is obviously make clear to consumers how they need to recycle. So that's something that will happen in the future. I don't think the QR code per se is suitable for recyclers as such, but there are other technologies, like I said, digital watermarking that could be used in the future. And that's something that I think more consumer goods companies are looking at on how to do that and how to incorporate that.
So you are focusing more on the consumer exchange with the consumers rather than like B2B with the recyclers, in the sense that this downstream data may help, for example, you to integrate, I forgot this word in English, to communicate more with the recyclers and maybe to enable more efficient recycling processes, for example.
Yeah, the challenge that we have is that for the consumers, we need a QR code on pack. An RFID chip is not feasible, also not economically at the moment for the products that we have. So if you have a QR code, the recyclers are not going to scan all the products and the QR codes for that one. We can communicate with our retailers, we can communicate other ways, but we need different technology if you really want to recycle the packaging, because we're talking about packaging here. You need to have different technology there. And if you, there are other things you can do regarding circularity, thinking beyond recycling, and that's more having consumers making an informed choice. And then you talk about ESPR and the information requirements. So you can think about in the future, and we need to see what direction it will take, but the amount of renewable carbon in your ingredients could be one of the measures in there, or biodegradability, things like that. But that's ESPR related and not related to recyclers. But we really need to work with a QR code, basically. That's the assumption we're making as a consumer goods company. And then it's not so suitable for recyclers. And I want to shortly come back on the batch discussion. We need to look at the consequences of going to batch level, because that's also not, at least at the moment, not feasible to do that for detergents, and also not really giving more information. I mean, you get a lot of the same digital product passport with the same information for different batches. There's no difference in your composition with the batch. So we really, we would not be happy if it would move to a batch level. And we've looked at, you need to do an impact assessment with the industry to look at what's the right level to approach things.
And at a certain point, we have to go to batch level.
Yeah.
I'll give you a very simple example of what we experienced in Berlin. CO2 footprint of a tin of Coca-Cola on a Berlin kiosk. Different batch levels. One is coming from the bottler in Brandenburg, and the second is coming from the bottler in France. It's a different CO2 footprint. And surprise, surprise, the CO2 footprint from France was lower than from Brandenburg for the Coke bottle in Berlin, because they use atom power compared to us. Nuclear power to produce it. This has such a massive effect on the CO2 footprint that a bottle from France has a better footprint than a bottle from Brandenburg, which is sold at the same kiosk in Berlin. And then you are on batch level.
Yeah, and it has its own challenges. And I would like to discuss with you, because it also has negative sustainability consequences, because there's a lot of artwork scrap that we would need to do. So I think I would plea for, let's look at what can be done and what makes sense from a sustainability perspective, looking at the overall picture on that one, and not. I think some of the regulators sometimes think the more information, the better, but that's not true. You can become uncircular if you ask for too much information. And we are, as Unilever, we want to be transparent, definitely. We are already with our ingredients, for example, online, but we need to have the impact assessments and understand what the consequences are in a broader sense.
Caroline, do you want to add something here? Femke, a question to you. When we talk about the textiles and the RFID tag that will be on a textile, it also might be considered as maybe e-waste, maybe part when it's about the recycling process of the textile. Do you have any thoughts about
well,
that?
That's one thing that we do not want, because that shouldn't be the case. It's I think what is very important if we think about circularity and we want to connect the physical with the digital, and you want to use it to enable recycling, so the garment can be deconstructed, the components can be separated, so it can go into the right recycling stream. It's very important that you connect a tag that stays with the product throughout its entire life. I think RFID technology has been commercially a very strong tool for companies to adopt, because it really helped them to build transparency in their operations, to hopefully reduce waste, to stop overstocking because you're producing what is actually sold. But what is very interesting, if you think about using the technology on a product level throughout its entire life, it's a completely different ask. It's the same if you think eco-design, you design for what the product is used for. So what we as technology providers are working on is to tag the actual products, so to develop tags that you can connect and stay with the products, and that are durable for so many washes, so it's still alive. Those are the type of, and still be economical viable solution for our customers, so we're not overpricing the products because just of the tags. So those are the type of technology improvements that we're working on, that are really taking our priority and making sure we are not seen as an e-waste, because that is not where we want to move towards. So yeah, it's just complicated. If you think about actually delivering solutions that help the circular economy move forward, it's very challenging to see if somehow a regulation could be built and it's actually seen as an e-waste, where that is not what we are moving towards.
Yeah.
But as interesting is your use case, what you mentioned, saying we piloting with workers' clothes on a lease base. So
yeah, that's a pilot in the Surpass. Yeah.
No, if you pilot this in the Surpass, then you have an e-tag in that clothes.
It's an e-tag in the clothes.
How often it was washed, how often it was repaired, and so on and so forth. And this is a good example to test it out from my perception.
Agree.
And then you are again on serialization. It's not a jacket, it's exactly this jacket which was washed
Exactly.
20 times and repaired 2 times and so on and so forth. So.
And that's exactly the information brands should want to be eager to have, because then you can even have actual reliable data to prove that you're building circularity and that you are reusing your garment for so many lives. And that should be the information shareholders are looking for, and that you can give back to really prove that circularity is there. So,
and it's a good proof point, because I doubt
Agree.
on the consumer side that you want to wear 20 tags, 2 in the jeans, 3 in the shoes, in the socks, in the shirt. I doubt a little bit if this will work that way. But on the business clauses, it's an ideal use case to start with a lot of value.
Could even be for a brand that sells jeans, and show that this were jeans that we brought to market, but now it has the third owner.
I would start with Louis Vuitton
bags.
Sorry? I would start with Louis Vuitton bags.
Yes,
a lot of money.
They have a reputation of reselling, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I will give you time to say your thoughts and what you would love to share with our audience today, your takeaways from each of you, and we will start, Karsten, maybe with you. Your statement.
Well, I think the DPP is absolutely pivotal to establishing a circular economy, and I'm very glad to see how many people are interested in that and how many companies are already working on it. So we have a bright future ahead of us.
Yeah. And we're looking forward to support from Circular Valley in that sense, support of such kind of startups that develop these ideas.
Yeah, I mean, what is so fascinating about the last batches of Circular Valley, there is so much AI in it. It is AI guided sorting and collecting, and you have AI everywhere. But if you have the information from a DPP, even better, yeah, you need less AI because you know what is there. So this combination of AI and a DPP, I think that is a marriage in heaven.
Yeah, you have already examples of this kind of projects in Circular Valley.
I would say they are nascent. So there is several repair startups who would want to have that information and who are getting in contact with the OEM producers. But let's give it some. I would guess 3 to 5 more years before we actually see that. I think the notion as such is still pretty fresh.
Okay, thank you, Karsten. Thomas.
Yeah, I have to admit I have a déformation professionnelle. I believe in the power of standards to transform the way we work and live. And we showed this in the last 50 years and it will continue. But on the how-to question, how to achieve this, I think this African unknown quote is exactly the right point. If you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And in the topic we are discussing, there's no alternative besides going together. We have to find our way to align ourselves around that and go together on this bumpy and difficult journey.
Thank you.
My turn?
Marion, yeah.
Okay, yeah. First of all, I didn't thank you yet for inviting me, but I think the digital product passport for me, it's really an exciting journey. It's really moving towards this glass house. There's really more visibility about your product for different stakeholders. And as Unilever, we're really on the road to that, and we really want to achieve that. There are certain requirements that we need. We need the standardization, as you say, across the industries. We also need the timelines to be aligned with different regulations and consistency. And that's one of our concerns, that we will get something now, we build our architecture, and then something new comes with ESPR, and we need to suddenly move to this whole batch thing, what you're talking about. And we need to make sure that we thereby learn while doing it, and then, make this road forward. This bumpy road, it will certainly be bumpy, but exciting. I like to be in a bumpy and explored road. And I think, I like your call. I think we need to all work together as an industry, but also with our stakeholders, with our suppliers, and with regulators to make it all work. Because that's the only way to make it work. I want to learn from the battery industry, from the previous persons, because they made it all work together. At least I assume it's working. And we are really starting here on our journey, and would like to see how we can get in the same place as the others are.
Maybe before we, Caroline, you will say, Marion, you said about the regulation, and one question came to my mind. How do you engage with regulation to direct to them the need in this gradual approach to the legislation?
We talk to people in Brussels. There are persons here from the AIZ, the Trade Association for Detergents. So we work together as an industry on that one. I know that we will have a workshop with some regulators in the near future as well to explain more in detail what I told about. Yeah, it's nice to have a good vision, and you need to have that, but you also need to be realistic about what's the consequences of that, and have you thought about that? And how can we turn it into a win-win? I think that's the challenge that you have. The regulators want this to work as well. We want it to work, and how can you make it work in a pragmatic way for the companies, but also being transparent and more circular, more sustainable for stakeholders and for consumers.
Thank you, Marianne. Caroline?
I think Surpass 2 is going to be fun. When I built the consortium, I did not want to have one DPP solution provider being the solution provider for the entire project, which is how almost every single other project around the DPP is built. There's one solution provider. It's a challenge to get competitors to work together. We're doing this with the help of Fujitsu, who's leading the pilot work package. They're in the room today. I'd like to thank them because they're very brave. But I think we'll get someplace because they're all very motivated. And in addition to the pilots, we'll have a community of practice group. And the community of practice group is for all of the DPP solution providers who could not join the consortium, because I have a personal limit of 50 partners and I cannot go beyond this. It's not feasible to get 50 lawyers from 50 organizations to sign a contract together. It's to manage IP is impossible. So 50 is the maximum. So to manage all of these hundreds of other solution providers who want to build DPPs for companies, and I believe there should be hundreds and thousands of DPP solution providers. So we created this community of practice, which is already several hundreds of companies large, and we will kick off next week. And here again, our goal is really to support this huge community of service providers, because I believe we need a lot of DPP expertise to diffuse, or I don't know, diffuser, because we need DPP ambassadors all over the place, and also to DPP ambassadors who explore how data can really enable real circular activity. That really is where we're going. Of course, we have to go through the whole DPP system standardization first, of course, but that's actually easy.
Yeah.
Compared to actually making circular economy on the shop floor. That's hard. Yeah. And that will be the Surpass 3, I guess.
How many of Surpass we should expect? Thank you, Caroline. Femke.
Well, being the last in the row, the DPP is such a big opportunity, and then circularity even a bigger opportunity. So it's an opportunity. I think we all need to work together, and so many wise things are said on DPP ambassadors. I like that one. It needs a variety of solutions to make that switch, and that's why it's very good to be in industry forums like this. So we speak to each other, get out the comfort zone of our small little company that we used to work in, with solutions that we were familiar with. This is a time and an era to ask for change, and we're one of them. So keep an open mind, but we need to make it work. So I think it's important you work with partners that understand the complexity of the change that we're in.
Yeah.
And that's cool, right? That's an opportunity. It's not a challenge or a threat. That's cool. So we need to always work in that mindset.
Yeah, and for me personally, I really enjoy when I see that the industry and the ecosystem every year more and more understand how this topic is important, and you see more engagement, and you just feel happy that more people join this topic. Dear guests, do you have any takeaways from your side that you want to say, or any questions what you would love to ask? Yeah, Anna, please.
Thank you, Eliana, and thank you to the whole panel. This is incredibly interesting. I come to this event with a perspective or an idea that the digital product passport was going to involve fixed, immutable data that travels with the product through its entire life cycle. But from the examples and the cases that you've given here today, it's already clear to me that at some point, or at many points along the way, this data is going to have to be updated. And I'm wondering, can you give us any indication of how exactly this will be achieved? And how do you preserve trust and transparency and reliability of data that is actually being changed throughout the product life cycle? Do you have any thoughts to add to that? We just won't update the data.
Sure.
For the moment, the only regulatory data that needs to be updated, to my understanding, is the state of health of the battery. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone in the room knows this better than me. But I think this is correct. So, for the moment, the only piece of data that by law will need to be updated is the state of health of the battery, however that is defined, and Dean is working on a standard to define what that actually means, state of health. There are many hundreds of ways to define state of health of battery. So how does this data get updated? That's the question you're asking. For the moment, that is not the regulator's problem. Okay, so electric vehicle batteries, they are serviced in garages and repair shops, and there's a lot of IT already pushed into garage shops so that vehicle manufacturers are connected with data. So data will probably flow that way and get back to the manufacturer or the responsible economic operator, who will push the update of the state of health data to the DPP.
And that's actually really crucial if there are going to be resale markets for EV batteries and so on. You have to have a complete and accurate history in order to determine what sort of second and third life possibilities are available.
And this is the point where you update data through the life cycle. And if it comes to battery, at a certain point, the battery becomes a different product. If you take out a battery out of a car and put it wall mounted in your garage as a storage, so it needs all the history, but it is a different product. And there will be a couple of discussions around textile industry, the same with the repair process and things like that. So we will see some use cases. And this is then really the Champions League of DPP. Perhaps we will reduce it to the max at the beginning and keep it static, but then it's nothing else than a data sheet and not a DPP through a life cycle. And these are ongoing discussions as well, back and forth, and to elaborate what can be done, what makes sense, how can we do it. And this is not done for all industries and in all the bits and pieces from my observation.
Thank you.
If I may just add one thing, I think there is, for example, in cars, there is the onboard diagnosis system. So if you hand your key to the dealer, he'll read it out and immediately see how you drove, how far you drove, what the temperature was. So I think the systems already exist to capture that information and store it somewhere.
I'm not saying you need new systems. I'm just saying over the life cycle. Yeah. So, and if you're then in the recycle, refurbish, reuse area, different parties come to the table, and this will be different discussions for a different point in time.
Yeah, and if I may chime in, just to give something a different perspective than the battery one. You know, for example, for detergents, there will be requirements to have all legislation in your DPP where you're compliant with. And currently we have, for example, the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive. It will be a Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation. If we cannot update that and keep the same QR code, imagine that we, for thousands of our products, as soon as the new Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation comes into force, we need to change all our artworks. That's not doable, which means that it needs to be possible to update your information in your digital product passport when things like that materialize. So it's just an completely different example, more compliance related, but something that regulators may not always be aware of the consequences. And and that we definitely need to update our DPPs, be able to do that during the lifetime.
That's true. Susanna, you wanted to ask a question.
I actually didn't want to ask a question. I wanted to make a comment and wanted to say something totally contrary to what you said.
More interesting.
Yes, because my absolute conviction is that there won't be an update of the DPP. All you can do is that you can add information from trusted issuers to the DPP. So I don't see updates of DPP because then you don't know, is it still the trusted source or not, and what has been changed. So I think things are only manageable, also from the IT technology kind of view, that you can amend a DPP. So if I have a battery that's loaded and unloaded and driven and loaded, you can record those loading cycles, from a trusted management system on the battery. And then from that, you can calculate the state of health. Okay, yeah, but you cannot have an information about the DPP and then change it. Yeah, how are we going to find out if that's still trustable information? So I haven't seen a system, at least, that can do that.
So sorry for the semantic then. If update in your attention is the wrong word, then additional information
amend
to the DPP. So repair process would be an amendment to the DPT in your terminology.
Absolutely.
And this will be needed in certain DPPs, and therefore it's dynamic over the life cycle. Thanks for that update.
Yeah. We have one more question.
Hello. Okay. First of all, thanks for the great discussion. My question goes beyond batteries and is across sectors, and is probably for Thomas for GS1. So GS1 that establishes standards today has also a data model with data that exists today, right? But the DPP will bring new data, new data points that are needed across sectors, right? Maybe ones that are common across sectors, others that are particular for each of them. How is GS1 planning to make this, to create these new data attributes and standards and validation that works for the industry in a harmonized way?
Very good question. Thank you. Yes, we have a data model, but this is one out of many data models in the market. So what we have to do, we have to adapt what's coming through DPP and other regulations in our data models and offering to the market, make sure it's interoperable all the time. But we don't have the tension to say this is the only one and right data model on planet Earth and you have to use this. This is our offer and there are many other offers. The important thing is please keep it interoperable, that everybody knows what's coming and what they are getting and can interpretate it. That's much more important than having the only one and the right one, which will never be the case anymore.
So do we have more questions? One question.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much. And I guess my question would be for Thomas, because you mentioned the importance of standardization and norms. I'm from Austria, and I work on norms and standardization and consumer protection. And the biggest questions these days about, because we speak about IT aspects, but we also spoke about circular economy and the aspect of ESG. I would say sustainability and governance, what is really important for me and consumers. And when they talk about battery, I would like to say, like, would there be, because when we go to question of unique identifiers and traceability, when we talk about lithium battery, the main sources are nowadays China, Chile, and Australia. And we do not really know as the consumers usually where it comes from and what is the source and how human rights friendly was the labor there. Will it be possible to trace via this technology the source of the lithium battery, like where it comes from? And will be available in the data to see the really end source for the consumers to make a sustainable choice at the end of the day? It's just like a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Daniel, you want to answer?
Very good question. Yes or no? we can imagine, yes, that well, maybe lithium case is not because lithium mining in the world is not having so many problems with human rights. It's not like cobalt, for example. But in any case, we can imagine that a country like Australia is saying, yeah, this lithium comes from my country, and Australians, in fact, they are thinking in this way. So Geoscience Australia, so the Geological Survey of Australia will put, let's say, a logo, mine it in Australia. So that's a sort of information that you can put in DPP. It's like an identity card of your material that you can put in DPP, and this information can follow the supply chain. For sure, what happens? We can mix materials. So I can be a plant refining or a manufacturer that this week I'm working with lithium from Australia, and next week I'm working with lithium from Chile. So what about that? So at the end, we can imagine a sort of that have a certain annual at your company level to have a sort of annual average or something like that, a mass balance note score of your annual production, for example. That's one solution. There is no one single solution because this question is complex. And we are only saying lithium. What about cobalt? What about graphite? What about nickel? What about manganese? What about recycling loops? So the question is not easy, but yeah, we are working on that in my DTH project.
Thank you, Daniel. Unfortunately, we don't have time more for the next question, but you could talk with our panelists later in the networking phase. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for this insightful inputs from your side and that you came to Cologne to speak with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As you know, money plays a big role in everything, in all aspects of our life, the same as in sustainability and for sure digitalization, because everything is perfect, but when it's about how much the question is about how much it's cost and what does it worth for me, the things are sound and have different shapes, you know. That's why we have here our keynote speaker. She is Cornelia Frentz she's Director of the Governance and Sustainable Investing in ECBF. It's European Circular Economy and Bioeconomy Fund. It's actually the first private venture capital impact fund, and that is exclusively dedicated to the circular economy projects. Cornelia, I'm inviting you to join our stage and to share your insights about why and how digital product passport is now at the frontier of sustainable investment.
Thank you very much, Ilias. Yes, so good evening, everyone. I'm the Director of Governance and Sustainable Investing of the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund, as Iliana already pointed out. And I'm really glad to be here. And thank you so much for inviting me again. So what I would like to do is basically talk to you about the importance that a European digital product passport would have for ECBF, and why it's a really crucial topic for us already. But first of all, I would like to point out to you or explain to you a bit what the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund is. And it's basically a fund that was initiated by the European Commission in 2020. And it was initiated because the European Commission found out in a study that there's a funding gap in the European circular bioeconomy. And this is why they had the idea to create the fund. And it's basically a fund that's able to invest. Am I speaking loud enough, or is it too that's able to invest in the EU27, the entire European Union, and 16 countries that the European Union has certain economic agreements with. The Horizon 2020 countries. And so this is basically our geographic scope, as you can see here on the left-hand side. And we are investing in companies that are having a technology readiness level between 6 and 9. that means that a certain type of commercialization already has to have taken place. So we are not investing in early startups, but rather in scale-ups. And the ticket size is 2 to 20 million. So over the entire investment lifetime. So most of the times we start investing between 2 and 10 million at first, and then later on, if the company maybe needs more money, we invest more. And the investment approach is basically that we invest in a syndicate, which means that we are always minority shareholders. So for example, if we invest 5 or 6 million, then other co-investors might still invest 40 million more, something like that. So that's basically the scale with which we invest. And we always try to get active board roles. I'm not sure if that's important now. But what's important for the DPP is that we are an Article 9 fund. So I don't know if you are, or some of you are familiar with the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. It's basically a regulation that entered into force in the end of, or in 2 levels actually, in the beginning of 2021 and later on in the end of 2022 with its 2nd level. So we are basically an Article 9 fund, which means that we are the most sustainable type of funds in the European Union. And as such, we need to have some type of environmental objective, and our environmental objective is climate change mitigation. So every investment target must save GHG emissions in comparison to conventional market participants. So this is why we are very sustainable. And later on, I will also tell you or show you another aspect that's important to us when we are investing, and maybe to you too. So the fund timeline is basically 5 years. So we are investing for a period of 5 years. We started in 2020, and we might be finished in 2025. And we have a divestment period of 5 years, which means that we are trying to exit the companies from 2025 onwards for a period of 5 years. Yes, so let's maybe move on. Here you can see our investors. As I mentioned, the European Commission basically initiated ECBF, and the cornerstone investor is European Investment Bank with 100 million euros. The entire investment volume is 300 million euros. And so the European Commission and the EIB said, we will initiate this project and we will give you 100 million. But in order for this fund to be truly successful, we still need private investors. And you would need to at least get a market commitment of 150 million. And we did that. So actually we got 200 more. So the entire investment volume is 300 million. And here you can see some of our investors. So just to point out a few, we have Landwirtschaftliche Rentenbank, which is the main creditor of farmers and forestry people or forest owners in Germany. And then we've got Nestle. And then we've got Neste. We've got, maybe just to point out some international ones, Bunge, which is a agricultural group from the United States. It's one of the biggest ag groups in the world. And then we've got GC Ventures, which is a Thai investor from Thailand. And just to get more into the topic, here on the right-hand side, you see our investment verticals. So the investment verticals are nutrition and food tech. And then we do ag tech and blue economy. That section or that sector also includes forestry. And then we've got packaging and construction and industrial biotech, bio-based chemicals, and specialties. And when it comes to the last words that I just mentioned, or the 4th investment vertical, we are also dealing with textiles. So we are not necessarily investing in textile producers, but rather in colors, for example, for textiles, or some type of solution that makes textile production more sustainable. And maybe just to make this a little more understandable for you, so we have basically 2 types of investments. So first, we've got investments that are intrinsically sustainable. For example, we invested in a company that's creating or producing artificial leather that's based on a biomass
and the biomass in that case is cotton. You can use actually different biomasses, cotton or hemp or millet. So, and that produces basically using mycelium, which is some type of fungus basically that grows on that biomass, on the cotton or on the hemp. And then out of that, they generate some type of biomass that then is treated and later on used by Balenciaga, for example, as artificial leather. So that's one of our intrinsically sustainable solutions. So that's the first type. And the second type is an enabling solution, basically some type of gadget or some type of machine that the consumer can apply. And once the consumer applies it, some type of GHG emission saving ensues or results from that. I always want to forward the slides, but I cannot. He's forwarding my slides. I'm just doing it here at the laptop. So why do we need traceability for our products and the biomass that we are using? So we basically have certain fund documents that are the basis of our acting, and there we've got the limited partnership agreement, which is basically the founding contract of the fund, and then we've got the private placement memorandum, which is something that was handed out to our investors with a promise of what we would invest in. Then we've got certain side letters, which means certain side contracts with the individual limited partners, with the individual investors, and all of them wanted us to be very transparent when it comes to traceability. So here I pointed out for you in the center of the page that basically we need to have traceability of where the biomass comes from. We need to have some type of evidence on that, hopefully or ideally a certificate. We need to have some evidence on sustainability of the biomass that is being used by the solution. And then we also need a compliance with EU law. And all of that should be certified with some type of standards or certificates. Here on the very right-hand side, you see our ESG due diligence checklist, but I think that's not very important for now. Let's just move on to why we need, I already told you why we need DPPs, but now I want to elaborate or explain to you a bit further on what we have looked at in the past with regards to DPPs, because we have a dire need for them. We have huge difficulties to finding out where certain biomasses come from, and my team is in charge for that. It's the ESG team. And we are spending weeks and hours, and if I still have time later on, I can show you an example. But let's move on to what we've taken a look at, what type of digital product passport providers we have taken a look at and tried to invest in or considered investing in. So maybe I just approach this slide a little more. So here on the right-hand side, you can, this is basically a slide from 2022 when one of our deal teams was looking at these passports. And you can see on the right-hand side that there's this track and trace section, which is highlighted in green, and that's a section that would be important to you. So here you can see the different providers. On the left-hand side here, you can see Everledger. I don't know if that's readable to you. It's a British provider. 2022, they had a venture capital of 34.6 million. So this is all about venture capital investments, right? So companies can still get other sources of funding, like grants or debt or something. This is just about the venture capital scene. So Everledger from the UK had this amount. And then just to point out, Circular, back then, is also from the UK with 15.4 million. And Eon, 10.7. Just to point out the most important ones. SourceMap, 9.8. And then later on, you can see, maybe you notice these are all UK and US American solution providers, even though we are having this European regulation going on. And then here down there, you see a Swiss provider and a French one, connecting food, and TrustRace is basically Danish, and then we've got a Dutch solution. And now we take a look at their development until 2024. Okay, 10 minutes left. So here you can see that Everledger, which looked quite promising in the beginning, filed for bankruptcy. So they are basically in liquidation. And I have to look this up. So they're in liquidation, they do not exist anymore. And they were a DPP for art, batteries, diamonds, and fashion. So they didn't make it. But then the next one, Circular, which was tracing electric vehicles, extractive industries, mining, plastic and recycling, they got further VC funding, and they are now at 51 million. So they're quite successful. The next one is Ion. It's a fashion DPP provider from the States with 11.42 million. And then we've got, I don't need to necessarily point out all of them, but maybe you can just have a look at Trust Race, which is also a fashion DPP. I tried to add some icons so you see the back, and that's supposed to stand for fashion. So that's a fashion DPP, Trust Race. They're from Denmark and quite successful. You can see that the European ones partially have grown with regards to their VC capital, and some have not. Yes, now to the next slide. Okay, sorry. And now maybe it's also interesting to you to find out who invested in those companies. And there you can see, for example, here with Circular, I tried to update this. It says March 2022, but I added some names this afternoon. Here, Circular was invested in because it has a focus on the automotive industry. It was invested in by Jaguar, Land Rover, and Total Energies, just to name a few names. So these big corporates are already trying to invest in DPPs. And then we've got Ion, this American, US-American fashion DPP. H&M Foundation, the H&M Foundation invested in them, and several other fashion players. And then we've got, let me see, what else could I point out? Farmers, okay, it was invested in by some farmers. And here you've got Trust Race. Trust Race got some funding from Fashion for Good, for example. There are some other fashion industry players that have invested. So and we've got one example that I want to detail a little bit more. It's Ion, the US-American solution. And down there you can see the services that they provide. For example, what I found quite interesting is they are providing a resale solution. So whenever the products that are registered with them, for example, like a Gucci bag or Louis Vuitton bag, is resold by the initial purchaser, they are earning some money out of it. So when you use this Ion service, so the producer is earning or benefiting somehow from a resale of the product. And on April the 26th of this year, they entered into a partnership with a Chinese DPP provider, Textile Genesis. And they are quite successful and even stronger now. Just to point out this example. Oops. And then maybe just to quickly come to a conclusion slide, and I need to read this up because our deal team came up with the slide. So what we see, we were quite hesitant to invest, and we did not invest in the end. I pointed out before that we were thinking about investing in DPPs, but so far we haven't done this because some of the solutions are providing blockchain solutions, and the respective deal team was of the opinion that that was not a good solution at the moment, at least. And we also found that many of the companies didn't have much traction. So they just had a few customers, and the deal team, so I'm not in this particular deal team, but the deal team was afraid that the traction wouldn't be sufficient. And they were also of the opinion that there were super high initial costs, and it was quite uncertain how the companies would develop. If you could see, if you had a look at, or if you saw the development of Everledger, for example, they filed for bankruptcy. And another point is, and I think this was also pointed out in some of the previous panels, that certain companies are not willing to provide their ESG data or their certificates. So there's a data gap, which makes it even more difficult. And here on the left-hand side, we added a company that's called MineHub. So IPOs, initial public offerings, meaning that these companies are traded on a stock exchange, almost never happen, or haven't happened so far. And so here there's one example of an IPO that was an American company, US American company, and they are trading at the Toronto Venture Exchange. That's the only company that the team found so far. I don't know if you know more, but
do we have questions from the guests?
one question or two questions.
Yes, so then I will ask you a question.
Yes, okay.
As a ECBF, what are your key investment criteria when you consider and evaluate technologies like digital passport?
So it needs to be innovative, and I think a DPP meets that requirement. It needs to be innovative. It needs to somehow save GHG emissions, and that is being verified by an external advisor. Mm-hmm. So we've got Nova Institute, that's a scientific institute that writes a report on the investments that we make before we invest, actually, at the on the investment targets. And and then other than that, it's basically filling in some type of ESG due diligence. And then we've got these typical VC venture capital due diligence phases, basically legal due diligence, financial due diligence, and whatever you would expect at any other venture capital fund. It's just that we have a focus on ESG, on sustainability.
Mm-hmm. And do you have some examples of such kind of companies? Where you
of which one?
Yeah, where you invested of which
for example, so we invested in a, just to name, so I had this example of the fashion company. That's
Ion?
No, there's this company that's called Mugu. Mm-hmm. Mugu, and they are this company that's producing alternative leather. It's based on mycelium. It's basically in the textile industry. And then we've got a lot of agtech solutions. For example, we've got a solution that's called Illicit. There's a question, I think. But what Illicit is producing is basically some type of substance that makes crops water resistant when there's a drought or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, two questions, yeah.
Yeah, could you please give me the microphone? Thank you. So we have a question, one here and one here. So just a second.
Three questions. So there's another question too.
Hi, my name is Peter. We are working with a solution based on the blockchain, meaning the battery passport, the event log is stored on blockchain. You mentioned beforehand that you did not invest into a company due to that fact that that company was working with blockchain. Yes. Has that changed since, or could you elaborate on that?
So I'm, as I mentioned, not in the deal team, so I cannot really elaborate on this, but I asked one of the deal team members today, and they said that blockchain was difficult. I mean, if you want, you can talk to them again. We can make a bilateral appointment or something, or a meeting, and then you can have an interview with them or something like that. I can offer you that, but I cannot really elaborate on why they were against this. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Confidential. Okay. Another question?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I had just curiosity to know in the startup companies why there was no companies from Germany investing in DPPs. So yeah, thank you.
There were, but I think there were companies from Germany investing in the DPPs.
Just one I saw.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So this was just it's basically just a selection of companies. It might have changed. So HDGF, is German. I think there are some German companies. Here, for example, this is a German fund, HTGF. There are some Germans also investing in it. Ah, okay, so the DPP providers?
Resourcify.
I don't know why there are no Germans.
Yeah.
They were not good enough for Germans.
Resourcify, yeah, it's a marketplace.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but they were not part of the selection of the deal team. So it's kind of pre-selected, right? Some of them, they are selecting the deals that they want to look at, and maybe when there were some Germans, they just...
Hi, yeah. Hi, Jasper. I work for a Dutch-based DPP solution company. Mm-hmm. And I was just interested if you could elaborate on how you guys judge an investment possibility for a DPP solution on its GHG emission potential savings,
Yeah,
since much of the responsibility for the savings or potential savings lie with users of those systems.
Yes.
So that just interested me. Could you elaborate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the DPP solution would somehow need to facilitate GHG emission savings. And I saw, when I was preparing this talk, that there are some DPP solutions that are offering some type of course they're offering ESG advantages, but then when they can somehow prove that some communication or some type of logistic step is skipped, which would already result in GHG emission savings, then it would become an investment target for us. When they're somehow facilitating the logistics of the value chain, or simplifying the value chain. So we would need to find some angle there. That would be really important to us.
Yeah. Thank you, Cornelia. And one last question from Holger from Wuppertal Institute.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for your presentation. As Ilias pointed out earlier, one of the big tasks is to make circular economy proliferate. So the question is, how do you assess a startup's ability to scale in terms of circular economy?
So what we would always need is letters of intent from potential customers. You need to have some type of evidence that the company will grow, and if they only have a few prospective customers, and we do not expect any market penetration, then we will probably not invest. So because we are not investing in early stage startups, but rather scale-ups. So we would need to have some type of evidence that there are different corporates or different producers that are really interested in onboarding this tool, and then it gives some type of added value to them. So that would be like a case that would need to be made.
Thank you. Thank you, Cornelia, very much.
Thank you.
It was very interesting. And yeah, thank you. You can address your questions later in the dinner. Now, we are moving forward with our last panel, but last but not the least, it's one more very important aspect, and more, I think one of the most important aspects of the Digital Product Passport, the technical aspect, what will be Susanna moderating with your great panelists. Susanna, I'm handovering to you.
Okay, now this time I did it right. Yeah, so freestyle, I think we want to pick up really quickly on the blockchain topic, because we're the panel, but we haven't prepared for it. My personal view is that blockchain is dead for the tracing of the things, where you trace things in your private blockchain that no one else can see but you as a company. And that's not working on open standards and other people can access. That's my personal opinion. Nevertheless, I think we have to distinguish about the use of blockchain, because blockchain is nothing else than a database that can keep something in the blockchain immutable, and this can also be a lot of other things. And for example, we have a very, very important technology that has been already discussed today, which is decentralized technology. Decentralized identifiers, for example, can be put on a blockchain and kept there, which has some advantages, some disadvantages. And as we have the expert here right next to me, also on decentralized technology, Ricky, what's your take on what you heard on the blockchain part? Do you want to make a comment?
Absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for having me on the stage. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about this topic in particular. And this blockchain topic is around a while. And we also were, as a startup, as a solution provider for DPP, into that a lot in the last 5 to 6 years. And we noticed the same, that blockchain, especially in this area of traceability and verifiability, is dead. And from my personal point of view, the main reason behind that is that you, when you want to use blockchain for verification or for tracing, the first question you always need to ask yourself is, do I want to store something on a public chain, or do I need to store that stuff on a consortia private chain point of view? And most of the solution providers and most of the big corporates decided to go for a private blockchain. And in the last 5 years, we've seen that basically crashing, because that is more or less not the sense behind that topic, because to store all this information and you need to build up an ecosystem around that, which is basically closed. And the natural way would be to store everything on a public chain, which is way too expensive and way too, let's say, not scalable enough. So that's the reason why I think personally that is not gonna fly, at least for like the complete, like storing everything from the tracing up to the DPP on chain. But you mentioned already there are alternatives which you can use, and this is definitely like, we heard it also in one of the earlier panels for self-sovereign identity. It's also coming up with the whole ID wallet concept, and it does not necessarily need to use blockchain, but if it does, you mostly want to use public available or public chains for anchoring your decentralized identity.
Exactly, where everyone can have access to. I think that's the point. Thank you, Ricky, for this short freestyle question, which we haven't prepared. So thank you for jumping with me into the cold water, as we say in Germany. Actually, I wanted to start the panel with Thomas Knote. Thomas, thank you again for being here. You, as Ilias already mentioned as well, you're the master of disaster with regards to standardization. And you have the very, very heavy job of being the chair of the JTC 24, which is a standardization activity of the CEN and CENELEC. And Thomas, what are you standardizing there? What is the JTC 24 standardizing? Could you help the audience understand what this important initiative is doing?
Thank you so much to you to invite me. And I always talk, I'm not the dictator of JTC 24, I'm more or less the victim. Because we have to organize at least now more or less 300 people with a lot of different expertise and of course interests. What we are doing is at least we are working on 8 modules of standards. And you had listened to Ilias, is about data carrier and unique identifier. It's always mentioned, but it's very prominent. But this is not the biggest problem we have. So we have it as well on the data storage. We have it with the data exchange formats and the procedures. We have to deal with security. And this is not just authentication, it's as well the issue of reliability of data. And now we come to the issue of blockchain. And I have to tell, yes, inside European Commission, there was at least a person coming from the blockchain community to set up at least the constraints for the DPP system. But now, really, this went back. Yeah? We will see, but I'm a researcher too, not just old stuff, let me say, standardization guy. And of course, we have to be open. Technology open for that. So I don't like to disclose something. Even we at least analyze the developments in blockchain technology in the last 20 years. So I would say now it's dead, but today there are a lot of disadvantages. As you mentioned already, there are as well some others like energy consumption and so on. Yeah? But let's work on that, because for some, at least I would say, use cases, it could be useful. Yeah?
Absolutely.
And Iliana, the keynote speaker, already explained Circular, yeah, as a very prominent DPP provider today already. Even the market is quite low today, yeah? But anyhow, they are using to some extent blockchain. So that's my impression on that. So, but I didn't end. Of course, we have to deal with the APIs. Yeah? As Ilias had a little bit explained, this system we have to standardize is quite complicated, because there is a big part of that is under the responsibility of the European Commission. This is the registry and all the registry services. This is another part is coming to the economic operators and the service providers.
Maybe can you explain what the DPP registry is for those who don't know?
This is at least like the telephone book. Yeah, in the registry there's just mentioned the registration numbers of the product and the economic operator and the, at least the factory, and nothing more. There is no data. Yeah? They just reference to the DPP data, decentralized, as we had listened already. And we have just coming in the last minutes of the ESPR elaboration, we have the issue of the backup service provider. So this means 3 different partners have to provide a system which has to be operational with millions of and billions of products. So this is really complicated, and at least we have to deal with that. But I'm quite, I'm quite looking forward, because most of our partners in the standardization learn now, yes, this is not a selection of one standard. We have to provide a system and a profile where a lot of standards can comply with. Yeah, this is called at least coexistence of standards. It's a little bit different to the explanation of Thorsten when he explained, okay, if we have several standards, there is no standardization. This is true for the data, but for the system elements, if it is blockchain or is it something else, as long as this is compliant with the profile which we need, then it's fine. And this is our objective. But now I'm talking too long.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to lead you into a certain direction, which is undermining what you said, because we have so many different participants at the JTC 24. Yeah. Do you want to maybe explain who we have and maybe who need the different technical approaches as well?
Yeah, so at least we do have already, there are a lot of partners already working very hard, coming from existing companies which are already in the market of identification of products. Yeah, this is like GS1, but as well new providers coming from the industry, from the chemical industry, to look for other standards or for other technologies how to perform the identification of products. Yeah. So we have already several partners who are representing different standards already there. And I'm very happy of that, because now they are acting on the same field, and at the end, they have to come to a solution. So there will not be a winner if just one standard will be selected. Yeah? And this is an interesting part. This is on the unique identifiers side. On the other hand, we have the approaches and the solutions coming from Industry 4.0 with the asset administration shell, which is at least a technology how to store the data from a product to create this digital twin of the product, just as an example, but as well others. And I'm hoping to have more and more partners having parallel technologies, so that we come to joint profiles. And that's the issue we have to deal, but to tell you, we have no time. So
yeah, and then maybe coming to a very important point of the work at the JTC 24 is supposed to be inclusive, right? Yep. Inclusive of standards that are already existing, to make the DPP work in a fast way, in a way where industry can reuse parts, at least, of what they are already using today. So where can we reuse, and where do we have to innovate in the DPP standardization, or in what areas do you see innovations required?
I think on at least 2 items. One is not just reuse, as well be open for new standards. Yeah, looking to data carriers. Yeah, we are always looking to data matrix code, QR code, and maybe today NFC. But tomorrow, these data carriers can sync on its own. Yeah, they have maybe CPUs and whatever. So this means we have to foresee the future of this already. And of course, this has an impact to security, for instance. So I'm not just looking from a reuse, even it's very, very important that industry has not to invest too much to change everything. Yeah, that's really important to take the existing standards into the new world. Yeah? And that's the one part. The other is to rethink standardization on a technical perspective. And I call this federated interoperability. Yeah? It is not just, we have 3 items or 3 types of interoperability. It's unified, yeah? The same specification language, integrated, everything together. And the other is a federated one. This means different standards can exist in parallel, and they are just connected on the smallest part of interactivity. And this is in a paradigm which were already developed 25 years ago. So this is nothing new. This exists already. And we can just reuse these paradigms in order to make the standardization fast, because you don't need to agree on everything, just on the connection point. Yeah? And it's already applied successfully, even on a field we don't like so much, because in the area of defense. So this means the Department of Defense of US had implemented this technology in the middle of the 90s already in order to combine the different simulation systems for making wars, yeah? For the simulation of a tank, of an airplane, of a soldier, and so on. And they had developed this very fast so that they could improve from the first Iraq war to the second in order to play war. And of course, I'm not in favor of all these, let me say, application area, but we should learn from that.
And here comes your Fraunhofer background, and thanks for that story around it. So, we have representatives of these different technical approaches also in the round, and I want to give the word now first to Ricky. Ricky, the Digital Product Passport, as we heard from Ilias, is the first time that the European Commission is asking for a decentralized setup system. You're representing the decentralized approach. What advantages or what specificalities, is that a word, does the decentralized approach have?
Yeah, thanks for this question. And let's start with, or decentralization is for me like quite a big buzzword, because a lot of people say I have a decentralized application, I'm storing my data decentralized, and in the area of DPP, this boils down for me to 3 main aspects. And the first one is the decentralized identifier topic, which we already said. That you have the possibility to create centralized identifier based on certain standards which already exist, or you start creating decentralized unique identifier. And that is, in fact, a core principle of a DPP. You need to have a unique identifier on item level, on batch level, which you are able to identify, where you can able to identify the product. That's the first level of decentralization, which from my point of view has many benefits from having it in a decentralized way. The second part is the storage. You don't want to have like a central place where all the tracing data on the world is being collected and being stored in one provider or on one database. That's something what you don't want to have, and I think the decentralization aspect is mainly referring to that point to that part of the storage, and that's something where we say, or where the European Commission says, the storage should be with the economic operator. So these 2 aspects already have nothing to do with, in general, with blockchain. It's completely without that. You can store that, the manufacturer can store, the economic operator can store that stuff on their side, and they can use decentralized identifiers for creating these without any blockchain. And the last part from my point of view, and this is the most important one, is decentralized trust. You want to decentralize the trust. We live in a world where trust mainly comes from centralized organizations, from brands. As a consumer, I mainly trust in a brand, in a product which I buy because I think this brand is a good brand. And for the future, I wish to have also like a decentralized trust mechanism in place where I know when I scan this product, I can verify that based on the signature, which comes from a trusted audit party, which we heard already, and everything is standardized from the European Commission. I can make sure this one is a product which is sustainable based on certain regulations and stuff like that. This is for me the decentralization the European Commission speaks about.
Okay, thank you, Ricky, for explaining that. And the decentralized technologies, there's a lot of new technologies, especially the decentralized identifiers, which are also capable of being, the product identifier. Where do you see application areas already for decentralized identifiers? Can you share some projects also that this is already used in?
Sure. So first of all, decentralized identifiers come with the same benefits as centralized identifiers, and they are already being used a lot. We have I think they're like this WCC standard, which defines the decentralized identifiers, has already, I think, something like around 40 to 50 methods how you can do that. And we see this being adopted in the DPP area, especially, for example, projects like BCGAF is using it heavily already since years. We have the UN Transparency Protocol, which is picking it up already in regards of products. And there are many more in this case which already use that today. And I think also some of the projects which we heard are picking this up more and more, such as the Surpass project, the Battery Pass project, Muddy Trace is also talking about it in some parts. And these are some of the example projects which I have.
And maybe also related is the project of the European Union for the human identifiers. Maybe you want to say one sentence about that one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So some of you may have heard about the European Identity Wallet. It's a new initiative, completely different from what we talk about DPPs, but they're also talking about verifiability and verifiable data for persons, so that I have my digital ID card, which I can show to someone, and I can prove that I'm over 18, which we heard earlier today. And this is starting to get important for organizations. So they are not only starting to build this European Identity Wallet for people and for ID cards, but they also want to have verifiability and verifiable credentials in the end self-sovereign identity for organizations. And this could be a level of trust which is currently missing on the level of I want to check if that manufacturer or this supplier is a trusted supplier. And I think the way it will go in the direction that this whole European wallet stuff will convert with what we are doing in the digital product passport area.
In the long run, you think? Okay, Ricky, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of insights of the decentralized approach. And I want to change to Lukas. Lukas Moschko, you are presenting or representing Industry 4.0. We already have heard it before from Thomas. You're from Bosch Connected Industries, and you're working as a business unit development manager Bosch Connected Industries, and you're also part of the working group Industry 4.0. I have, as we are a little bit in the technical panel, can you explain to us what the Industry 4.0 has done before, maybe, and what they have to do in the area of digital product passports, and maybe explain a little bit the approach that is coming from you, because you're kind of coming from a different angle, but there's been a lot of activity already in that area, so we are eager to hear your approach as well.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Susanne, for having me. Representing Industry 4.0, I hope I can meet those expectations. I mean, what this concept is about is basically, for those who haven't heard about it, which are probably only a few people, but it's about like connectivity, establishing connectivity through digital technologies along value and supply chains in industry. With the aim to be more efficient, to be more sustainable, to create new business opportunities and business models. And in this context, I mean, the context of Industry 4.0 is like now 13 years old, and shortly after, the German government has, for example, founded an organization, the platform Industry 4.0, to drive this digital transformation towards Industry 4.0 and orchestrating several activities among companies, government, research. And shortly afterwards, a concept called digital twin came up. So a digital twin is basically a data representation of physical assets. And to create those digital twins, shortly afterwards, a concept named the Asset Administration Shell has been established and is now also kind of, let's say, curated by an own industry association, the Industrial Digital Twin Association, IDTA. And the concept behind that is just, yeah, we heard it today already. It's kind of a data storage system where you can, which allows data sovereignty, but allows also to kind of share data and store it in a structured way. And this is, for example, also a concept or a data format which is suitable to meet requirements of digital product passports. And I guess also some people in your committee, Thomas, are favoring towards that solution. And it's also I'm not in the IDTA, but I can speak from our point of view that it would be a nice thing that this is a compatible concept in the standardization of digital product passports. And the reason behind that is, for example, that, like you said, there is already some work done. There are submodels for different use cases already been implemented. And
you have to explain the submodels to the audience, because submodels is not understood maybe by everyone, because I think that's a super important outcome of Industry 4.0 is semantics, right? About a lot of things. Maybe say a few words about that.
Yeah, the submodels in the context of the administration shell are basically some kind of a pre-formed data structure which allows to apply that for certain use cases. And so companies who want to apply that, they don't have to create this all on their own, but they can just use the openly shared submodels. For example, there is a submodel for battery passports currently in work at the IDTA. They can just use it, take it, download it, and apply it or adapt it to their own needs. And the reason behind that is to make it also easily accessible, not only for the huge companies which have the development budgets and resources to create this, but also to make it accessible to SMEs and smaller companies who maybe not have those resources, but who still participate in those industrial value chains.
Okay, thank you. And when I hear people in the JTC 24 speaking for, asset administration shell and Industry 4.0, I hear for identification, they use the identification link, which is kind of the third identification method in the club, I would say. At the moment, I read decentralized identifiers, of course, 15459 standards such as GTINs, SGTINs, and so forth, and the identification link. So this is currently being discussed in the working group and have a high potential of being accepted as part of the standards. And of course, I mean, it's not really competing, because what I hear from you is you have a lot of work done already in the supply chain, defined vocabularies, how companies can speak to each other from one actor to the next. Here we have, verifiable information that's been issued by a trusted issuer. So this can actually all come together to a beautiful digital product passport solution. I want to move to Johannes. Johannes, you're from Johannes Simberg, of course. You're from Akatech, Division Manager, Transformation of the Economic Environment. At Akatech, how do you come into the game? How do you maybe help companies deciding for the right technical way? Maybe you have to switch it on.
Yes, now it works. It's working. Yeah, thank you also for the invitation, first of all. And let me begin with Akatech. It's the German Academy of Science and Engineering. We're basically an NGO funded publicly. And so we're a neutral arbiter between the different parties that are coming together. So, as you may know, the Gaia X and data spaces is also hosted by Akatech in Germany. The Industry 4.0 Research Council is also with Akatech. And we also wanted to address the DPP topic. Of course, we have been working for a long time with systemic, already in the Circular Economy Initiative, and already there identified that the DPP would be really important for the batteries. And with that basis, we started the battery passport, of course, with a lot of partners, because that's at the core of Akatech, right? We bring together all those different companies, researchers, NGOs, to get the activation energy of technologies down. I'm a chemist, so activation energy is important for me, obviously. But we want to help businesses to establish technologies, right? So that's why we also produced the battery content guidance, the technical guidance, where Thomas was in the lead, of course, the data attribute lists, that then feed it again in the demonstrator that Circular so nicely drew up. So with those things that we prepared there, we want to help companies get into touch with these technologies, have really low barrier of entering it. And as a second part, of course, the things that we identify as gaps, for example, the battery regulation is quite the example for that. We can also transfer back to policymakers, right? Obviously, Circus and other projects are doing similar things, but that's also important to us, that the implementation of such technologies is really pragmatic. Of course, you have to discuss a lot about technologies and how will it work out, but in the end, you have to have this conversation between those who have to implement it and the policymakers. So that's really at the heart of things at Akatech.
Thank you, Johannes, for giving this insight. And I want to move to a different topic, which is about the costs. In the previous talk, we heard something, and the solution was too expensive. So we have a big topic here about the expense. Does it have to be expensive to buy a product passport solution? Lukas, do you have an opinion on that? What's your take on this?
Yeah, actually, I'm really happy that today we already heard a lot about the topic, that there have to be profitable business models around DPPs, because otherwise this whole concept will just create administrative expenses. So, of course, I would say a battery passport solution, product passport solution has to be, it would be beneficial if they are as cheap as possible. That's basically because when it's cheap, it's easier to establish profitable business models. In the end, I guess it depends on the solution, what the industrial ecosystems will do with those passports, and what needs they gonna address. Maybe there are some solutions or some services or some business models which require more sophisticated passport solutions, which go beyond the regulation. And for example, because more data has to be shared, or data has to be updated more frequently, I don't know. And maybe in this case, this requires a more elaborated passport solution, which is more expensive, but is worth it for all the stakeholders because they can create adequate value propositions around it. But generally, in the first step, I would say, of course, the more affordable those solutions are, the easier it is to establish them.
Thank you for that insight. And I think, yeah, maybe you have to then differentiate between the mandatory data and the additional data. And if you want to have the additional data, maybe you want it also to it's possible for you to spend more money on it. But the base solution that makes you compliant to the regulation should be probably cheap, or as cheap as possible. Ricky, you're a solution provider. How can you reach that for your customers?
Yeah, good question. And when we designed the DPP solution, we had three main parts in our head when it comes to scaling. And this is, first of all, it needs to be open. It needs to follow open standards and the standards which will come. The second point, it needs to be affordable depending on the product you create. A battery for a car is definitely more expensive than, I don't know, a pair of shoes which I buy, right? So it needs to, you need to collect way more data for a battery than for a pair of shoes. I'm not an expert in this case, but still. And the last point of the DPP solution from what it needs to have is it needs to be easy and fast. And what I mean with that is, so today we are still living in the world where I create digital product passports on a pilot. I collect data manually, and for me, a big cost factor is not the price which I pay for the solution. The big cost factor is how fast I can create digital product passports for my products. And in the end, the vision, the goal needs to be that I can create digital product passports for T-shirts or for batteries in the factory in seconds. And this is a big cost factor which I see is very important.
Johannes,
yeah.
Please. Yeah.
Maybe just a quick addition also to that. From the battery passport, we also want to point out, I think cost is really hard to detect. We're also getting the question a lot of times, and so that's why we introduced the approach of looking at the effort that actually the battery passport or digital product passport implementation will take, and we will publish that in October and November, so I'm not going to tell too much, and it's not finished yet, just a little teaser. But what we see maybe as one point, that a lot of those who have to implement the digital product passports have a lot of deviating opinions. So it's not quite clear yet what the cost will be. So maybe that's just an addition. And a second addition, that, of course, the data attributes, the price. Yes. The data attributes, of course, determine a lot also on the technology, right? We're a technological panel here, but obviously, as you just said, the dynamic data will determine a lot about what you have to do in the implementation. If you don't have it, which could be for some kind of textiles, right? Or for batteries, there will be dynamic data, we know that already. So that's going to be a whole lot of impact that we don't know yet.
So we have to jump to the next question, but there's room later on in the evening, I guess. So open standards we heard, and I think maybe also open technologies, open source implementations, permissionless access, which are basically also the three success factors of the internet itself. A browser is not expensive, and storage to store a website is not expensive either. I wouldn't expect it later on to be more costly than that. But I'll see, that's my pure optimism today. So let's move to the next topic, which is a supply chain. We had touched it a little bit in the earlier panel. Getting the data from the supply chain is a challenge. When Thomas, when you hear that,
from the people you talk to. What are specific examples of challenges to collect the data in the supply chain?
At least this is always the same. First is reliability of the data you get. We have a very good example, this is FSG for wood. Yeah? If you buy a piece of wood, you can buy this FSG certificate or not. The difference is just the cost. Both can come from the same forest. Yeah? And this is about issue of reliability of data. We have to solve this, if not, we come directly to greenwashing. Yeah? This is the first part. The second is the level of automation. Yeah? If we need always manual auditing, forget it, it's too expensive. Yeah? Of course, in automotive industry, we have some nice databases where you can get some data from the different product items, even carbon footprint and so on, but these are at least average data. It's not very specific, and here we have a big problem. And the second or the third part is, from the problematic point of view, is trust. So one of the newest approaches for organizational or trans-organizational interoperability is Catena X and Manufacturing X with the one up, one down approach, which is quite nice. Or we had in the former time these platform oriented approaches, how to deal with cross-organizational interoperability. And at least these are the three items we have to solve. There are existing solutions for that already, so we can deal with that, and I think then we have a chance. This is my idea, and of course the verifiable credential approaches we have so far seems to be, let me say, promising, but still it's not really industrialized. So we have to check, and there are a lot of issues still open. We have to solve, so we cannot stop with the current situation today.
Yeah.
So we need innovation on that, and not just on that side as well, on, for instance, the solutions on Industry 4.0. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. And you mentioned verifiable credentials, and not everyone in this room might know what this is, but I leave the expert to explain that to the audience. Ricky, what is a verifiable credential?
Thank you very much. A verifiable credential is basically a set of data which is signed by a trusted party. I always take this example also from the human world, as we have this ID wallet concept, and in the end, this is like if you have a digital ID card, it's just a data object which you store on your phone, which is signed, for example, by the German government saying, "I'm really Ricky." And this is the base idea of verifiable credentials. And verifiable credentials can, and we heard this now multiple times, also be adopted for the DPP space. And there are a few good examples which are using this partly already in production. But I have one problem which I would like to see more adopted in this case is, and one example was already brought up with Catena X or Cofinity X, which is also here today, and they solved the issue using verifiable credentials for the how to trade with a trusted party. So you can basically verify each other and say, you know, I'm really talking to this supplier. I can make sure the data he's sharing is really coming from the one which I'm talking to. And for this reason, they're using verifiable credentials already today, which is good because that solves already one particular problem in how to exchange data with trusted parties, one up, one down. We heard it. But what is not, used in production right now is how do I trust the data which is shared along these chains? So how do I really trust the carbon footprint calculation? How do I really trust the due diligence report which was shared with me? And herefore, verifiable credentials could be used as well, because these kind of due diligence reports or carbon footprint calculations could be signed by auditors, by trusted sources or trusted parties which are coming from or which are approved by the European Union. And this is what I would really like to see more happening, but therefore I think we also need to have more standards and more alignments and more ecosystem coming up.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing this example up with the carbon footprint and the verifiable data for carbon footprint, because we're talking about the digital product passport here. We're talking about some digital, and digital things can always be faked. So if we're adding up the carbon footprint of a supply chain and now also have a price tag on it with CBAM coming in, you know, the bigger your carbon footprint is for the product you place on the European market, the more money you have to pay. So we can think of the fake news that is coming along with the supply chain if the data is not trusted. So a very important point. Thank you for making that point. We have no more time for the panel discussion, but we have time for one or more questions from the audience. Who has a technical question? There's one at the back. I think it's Timo.
And now with microphone. A couple of statements. First of all, as Thomas was saying, the system of the automotive industry, which is IMDS, it's not totally right that this is just somehow average data and so on. So it's much more than that. And what this goes into the direction of what I would like to say. So the legal requirement does not foresee that data has to be collected decentralized, right? And I appreciate Ricky that this was also not mentioned in your speech. You have said that because you did not say it, and therefore centralized systems have proven to be highly efficient. They work. In the automotive industry, we have proven that for 25 years. We have 110 million data in our system. It's very critical, business-sensitive information, but from BASF up to us, it's being done and it works very well. And even the Indian Tier 5 supplier is not hesitating to provide us that data. So I believe that centralized systems have to play an as equal or even higher role of importance also in the standardization work as it does decentralized systems. However, in the whole discussion, I only hear Industry 4.0 and decentralized here and there. That makes sense. I'm not saying this does not make sense, but I'm saying also in your standardization work, the role of standardized tools and systems need to play an as important role, because this is the true reality. If you are a vehicle manufacturer, you have to collect data from all over the world down to the Tier 7, Tier 8, Tier 10 supplier. You cannot expect them to deliver data into decentralized systems. It will never say never, but it will take decades until you are there. At the same time, we need that data tomorrow. So to put some realism into the discussions, I think the only way to go is via centralized systems, and then to switch over somewhere in the future into the other worlds of decentralization.
Thank you, Timo. I guess we invite you next time to the podium. We have a more spicy discussion here on the podium. Timo Unger from Hyundai, who was heavily involved in creating the IMDS, which is a database about products in the automotive. And I think here's also, again, the need. You can see the need of the people and the companies to reuse what's already there. Yeah, so a lot of people want to reuse what they're used to, where they have the data today, and we have to somehow find a way to maybe merge those technologies together. And please, Thomas, your reflection on
yes,
that comment.
Of course, thank you so much, because the entire system is much more complex than we can here elaborate. And of course, IMDS is a very good tool with very nice data. And of course, I would say most of them is very valuable. But on the other hand, we have in a better regulation the issue of item level data collection. And on IMDS, we are much more on type level. Yeah? And this means, of course, this is very, very good. So we should not just throw it away, but we have to add on this new technologies. And you can imagine, to come from a type level to an item level, we have to investigate how to deal with that in order to be compliant with the regulation. And by the way, the data is an issue. We have very less regulation today and even no standardization. Our JTC 24 is not dealing with data, it's just with the system. This means we have a lot of things to do, and of course, if I made the impression that we have to throw away the existing one, then it's completely wrong. Yeah? So we have to reuse what we have already, what is reliable, but we have to investigate much more into the new way, because you can imagine if you are, let me say, by Hyundai, and you have a battery, batteries consistent of 3 different cell manufacturers coming from different factories, then at least you have to collect the greenhouse gas emission based on the real, let me say, production side. And this is not just type dependent.
Okay, so we're going to discuss that more in the break. Also, we have central systems today for REACH in the chemical industry. We have April, in the electronics, all existing systems. I don't think we're going to throw them away from one day to another. So we have to get together, get our heads together, have these events to discuss how it's possible to move to the future where we have a DPP. But Johannes, you had another comment.
Just a few sentences. I think there might be a little bit of a misunderstanding that the decentralized part is the DPP, right? The traceability is not the DPP. And sampling your data from the upstream is not the DPP. You need to do it. And you need to put it in the DPP. But I think everybody should go home. The DPP is not traceability.
That's absolutely right. And we have a comment from Unilever here. Please, Marion. Yeah, please, go ahead.
And it's more to Thomas. I see in this audience, and also the first sectors getting a passport. It's not fast-moving consumer goods. It's not chemical mixtures. In developing the standards, how do you ensure that you also are aware of the possible consequences things may have for a sector like ours? So, because
today we have 2 constraints based on the ESPR. This is no food and no animal food.
And no pharmacy.
Yeah, sorry?
No pharmacy.
And no pharmacy. So these are the 3 items we exclude. All the others are in. This is as well construction. We had this discussion last year when the participants from construction would go away from DPP system and say, okay, we are doing our own thing. But then European Commission explained, no, you have to come in. This means we have at least from most of the sectors already participants, even from tires or whatever. So they are putting their expertise into the use cases and the user stories. And there's a quite nice concept we made. We have the use cases. These are the generic building blocks. How to apply a DPP system and so on, and how to deal with that from a different perspective on an economic operator or whatever. And we have the user stories. There translate this into stories for different sectors. So this means, for instance, for the batteries, we have some specific user stories. What happens when we have just to exchange 2 or 3 or 4 cells of an entire battery pack or of a module? And so we have at least some illustrating user stories to make it touchable. And so from the different partners, we have more than 20 member states in. They are coming at least from the different sectors exactly these user stories, but they are generalized, so make generic in the use cases in order to have something where we can agree all of them. Yeah?
Yes.
And this is the idea behind.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. And of course, the involvement is by sending your alliance, who's also here tonight, to the meetings, have them represented, have the opinion represented, maybe in the standardization activities, and make sure that you're being heard. You have to raise your hand and you have to be loud so that you're heard as well. Thomas, one last comment, and I think then we have to close it, and everyone goes to the enjoyable evening.
Today we have more than 30 liaison requests coming from different industries, from technology communities and so on. So they are already looking into our work and give comments.
Okay, thank you. We're at the end of this fascinating, interesting, spicy panel. And I want to give back the microphone to Iliana, who will close our evening, I guess.
Yes, I will close the evening. Thank you very much, dear panel number 3 speakers. It was very much insightful. Thank you. And we have a small thank you to all of our speakers.
Thank you, Iliana.
Yeah. I wanted to thank you all and for the contribution, for everything, for your participants, for the speakers, how everything went. And we discussed today very interesting and important topics on digital product passport and battery passport, and try to bring some light to this discussion. As at fifth Solvay conference, just now we discussed this with Thomas. Thomas, maybe can you tell a bit more about this, what you showed me on the picture? Because actually the friend of the Thomas grandfather, he was at that day on that conference, and it's an interesting fact. And as exactly at that conference, we try to gather all of these great minds together today, and also to tackle some questions about our time, challenging moments about the circular economy. Thomas, you can share this? Yeah.
At least this was not 1927, it was 1933.
Yeah.
Really, the grandfather of my friend was participating. And the interesting part of that is that they had very hard debates. Yeah, very, very hard. We are here so smooth together, and we had just some contradictory questions. And
yes, exactly.
I think let's have it more, because by having contradictions, by having big debates, we come to a step forward.
Exactly.
And remember, at this stage in time, they had no computer. Yeah, even IBM had started something and so on. And they developed something, yeah, and they created a mindset and completely methodologies where is today we just approve this. This is true, even today. Yeah? And this means by having this debate, they created at least a new science. And let's do this together by having this debate.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas. Last sentence here. This is Marie Curie. This was at this point in time the only woman. And in 1933 there were just two, Lise Meitner and Marie Curie. Yeah? And now we are much more diverse, and now our head is a woman. So
awesome.
Let's do this for that.
Thank you, Thomas. But that's why I'm asking you to engage with us, and those of you who are interested joining our CircularTech Digital Product Passport community, you are welcome. Stay informed, follow us on our website. And one more thank you to all our sponsors, because your support was much appreciated. Let's enjoy the evening, and the music was very nice to spend time with you.